Good afternoon. It is January 18th, 2024. I think I'm finally getting used to saying 2024 after a couple of weeks of the year. I am Will Scouch, host of Scouching Live. I am also joined by producer AJ. No Sam McGilligan today, as is usual on Thursday. And I wish him a happy vacation down in the Caribbean or Caribbean, however you prefer to say it. Anyway, producer AJ, how you doing?
I am doing well, sir. Doing as good as I can considering the state of my hockey team, but that is the way it is sometimes.
Yeah, we're not a Leafs show, but they're always worth talking about.
Wait, we aren't?
No, apparently not.
Oh.
The colors are blue. You're a Leaf guy. I've got a Leaf guy back there. The sign glows blue. Also, shout out to the better half in my household for getting that for Christmas for me. It's a nice little addition to the set. But anyway, welcome to Scouching Live. Today we got a really fun show for you. But before we get into it, I do have to do the ad reads for the day. We're brought to you by Fanatics. You can use our affiliate link below or scan the QR code in the description to provide a small kickback on the show or to the show on anything you buy in the store. We're also sponsored by Puck Preps, which is the website for all of your NCAA prospect needs. Sam and I both do some writing over there. We're going to be doing up a write-up on the USHL All-American game that occurred. We're just waiting for video to be available on that. But all the CHL draft stuff you need comes from there. So it's a great website full of very smart people doing very good work. We're also brought to you by Fractal Hockey Consulting, which is my business for hand-tracked targeted player analysis and recruitment packages, mostly focused on the NCAA and Europe, but we're flexible to any of your needs. And of course, we're also brought to you by Scouching.ca. So you can subscribe to Scouching to get exclusive access to innovative data tools with tons and tons of insights into the draft and the prospects and players that have been drafted and all kinds of fun tools for the NHL and beyond. So today, the producer and I have come to bring you a special edition where we're going to be doing our mid-season NHL awards. So we met up last night for a couple of hours and sort of hashed out some thoughts and you know, argued with each other a little bit, a healthy amount. And I think that continued on into this morning a little bit, maybe just a little.
Tiny bit.
But yeah, a tiny bit. But we're going to be going through most NHL awards that are voted on. I think we're going to skip the Lady Byng, because who knows about that one.
Yeah. And we're not doing the Ted Lindsay because we're not players.
Yeah, no, as much as we like to think we are, we're not. And what's the other one that I'm missing?
Bill Masterton?
That we forgot? Yeah, the Masterton Award. That seems very... Yeah, I don't know who's going to get it. I can't think of a case off the top of my head that is super inspiring, I guess. I don't know. Maybe Patrick Kane. I
guess we didn't do GM of the year, but like...
Well, sure, like, cool.
But that's those are the awards that are left off. Everything else we're doing, we're even somewhat projecting the Art Ross and Rocket Richard. So
right. And then we made up our own award. We made up our own award, which we'll get to last, but hope you're looking forward to it as much as we are. So, Mr. Producer,
yes,
shall we dive right in on the discussion? And also, sorry, I should mention that the back half of the show, once we get through the awards, we're going to talk a little bit about some potential contending teams for the Stanley Cup as the season passes its midway point. And then, of course, we'll get to chat questions. So fire away with all the questions you need to get off your chest, and we will get to them later in the show. So
and prepare to flame us for our takes, because
exactly.
We're dumb.
Yeah, we're real dumb. We're not that dumb. We a little bit.
Everybody's a little
especially
dumb.
Yeah. I feel less dumb on Thursday afternoons than I do Monday evenings.
Well, that's because Sam's here.
You said that, not me.
Love you, Sam.
Yeah, we do. Anyway, let's start with the Jack Adams Award. So the Jack Adams Award, if you don't know, is awarded to the Coach of the Year. So I don't know if you want to be the one. I'll be the one to start these off.
For it.
Yeah, so my Jack Adams, the way we're going to do this also is just 3 names. At least this is what I did, because 5 is a lot. And 3 feels right. I would be cool with any of the 3 here winning. That would be Rick Tocchet, Jared Bednar, and Rick Bowness. So with Bowness, honestly, with the Jets, on one hand, they are outperforming what people thought they were going to be. And yes, Connor Hellebuck, which we'll get to, I'm sure, is having one of the best seasons of a goaltender in the analytics era, I guess you could say. But I love Rick Bowness's style and vibe. Like, he seems very supportive of players and but he pushes them and, like, respects the game a lot, and the way he interacts publicly also seems to be very indicative of how he seems to be as a coach. And I mean, the turnaround in the Winnipeg Jets organization since he's shown up has really been quite something. So I'm a fan of him. I mean, obviously it's got to be Rick Tocchet on the ballot too. Nobody would have thought the Vancouver Canucks would have gotten here. I mean, they've cooled down a little bit coming into halfway point, but not that much. Maybe they cool down a little bit down the stretch even more when Thatcher Demko stops being God in net. But you could say the same thing about Winnipeg, I guess you could say. But I do think Rick Tocchet has really, really squeezed a lot out of the guys he's got, and the best players he's got are having pretty much career years. All 5 of their top unit guys are having career years, and that is difficult to have happen all at once. And I think at least some of that has to be chalked up to Rick Tocchet. And Jared Bednar, I mean, the Colorado Avalanche just play such great hockey. Yes, they've got some great players, but he's a really, really you don't hear much from him. At least we don't here in Southern Ontario. But every time I watch the Colorado Avalanche, like, you see the game changers on their team too, but they're very sort of Boston Bruins like, where the supporting cast and everyone else sort of get a lot of they just play a really, really responsible and good style of hockey. Yes, their goaltending has been solid, but it's not on the same level as Winnipeg or Vancouver. And I get the feeling that Colorado is a team that is just going to roll and keep rolling. They're doing really well this season already. And it's another one of those things where the easy choice for coach of the year goes to the guy whose team outperforms what people think. But I mean, sometimes it's a good coach coaching a really good team year after year after year. And I think that Bednar deserves a look. But I mean, if it's me, I'm throwing Rick Tocchet in there, probably number 1, then Bowness and Bednar. And I know that's not the order it is in my notes, but I just changed my mind on the fly there.
Thanks
so
for making me
you're
look
welcome.
dumb on my graphic, Will.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But anyway, yeah,
I have a very similar list. In my Jack Adams, it is Rick Bowness 1, Rick Tocchet 2, and Paul Maurice at 3. For me, with Bowness, he's just really changed the way that team, like the culture of that team, and they've performed so much better. Like, you look on paper between the Vancouver Canucks and the Winnipeg Jets, what team do you actually like look at and think is better? Just on paper.
Between Vancouver and Winnipeg?
Yeah, between Vancouver and Winnipeg. Like,
probably Winnipeg.
Really? Because for me, I look at the star power of Vancouver, right? And like, Tocchett's obviously elevated those guys and gotten them into a really great spot. But where did we think Winnipeg was going to be this summer, right?
Right.
Or coming into this year? We thought they probably would be what the Calgary Flames are right now. And they've been first in the NHL at stretches. I think they still might be. And they've just had a really great season. But Rick Tocchet also deserves high praise for that as well. Like, those two are 1 and 2 for sure. And then I put in Paul Maurice because the way Florida plays is awesome. And Bednar is a great shout too. I think he's pretty great. And he'd definitely be in my consideration beyond number 3. But I just think the way that Paul Maurice has helped get the Florida Panthers to a state where, like, they play super fast, they challenge everybody, they don't give you any time and space to do anything. That team's awesome. So I wanted to give Paul Maurice some love because in my past I have not been I've been pretty critical of Paul Maurice, and he's proven me wrong. So at some level, it might be a bit of an overcompensation for not seeing what he was actually doing well, but I also think he just deserves to get some consideration this year.
I think the other name too, I mean, I agree. And I think, I'm waffling back and forth with Bowness and Tocchet.
Yep.
And I mean, I like the vibe of Rick Bowness more than what I've seen from Rick Tocchet. And I think that Vancouver getting that star power, all firing on all cylinders, that helps a lot. also, the name that came to mind, and I'm sure if we had to submit like a full 5-person ballot for me, was John Tortorella, like a guy who
came to mind.
The Flyers were in the gutter like for a long time, and this is the John Tortorella pattern, where once in a while, he'll go to a team and have a great start, and just, you know, he'll have his time in the sun, and we'll see if it's sustainable for Philadelphia. But that team, nobody was giving the time of day, and they might make the playoffs. Right now, they're 6 points up on Pittsburgh in the Metropolitan Division, 4 points back of leading the division with the New York Rangers. So again, if you want to talk about squeezing stuff from a stone, Philadelphia, yeah, they have guys coming back who have found their game again, like Sean Couturier. Morgan Frost has been pretty good this year. You know, Travis Sanheim's been very good, and they've added Jamie Drysdale now.
And Konechny's been awesome too. Like
Konechny's been very good.
Yeah, they've had guys step up for sure, and Torts definitely deserves consideration as well. It's just, am I comfortable putting him up there right now?
Yeah,
like in a top 3? No. But if Philadelphia can make the playoffs, he definitely has some more legitimacy, at least in my mind, to enter that conversation as like a top 3 guy.
Yeah, and I think there's also something to be said as well about just the way Tortorella. I don't know. I think I'm just biased too, because I love people in general who are like John Tortorella. You know, where he can be a bit of a hard bottom, but he also can, you know, get a lot out of you if you play ball with him, right? Like if you get on his level, you know, take everything in stride. It seems, this is me from an outside perspective, he wants, you know, he's the type of person who will yell at you but support you through yelling at you. And I've had that kind of treatment from people before, and I respond to it relatively well. I know a lot of people don't. You know, I'm sure a personality like his is kind of polarizing. I think you saw a really great example of that in public the other day when he went after the reporter who spread that, you know, Kevin Hayes, you know, story that went nowhere.
Yeah, about Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah, about Cutter Gauthier.
Influencing Cutter Gauthier to leave Philly.
And I think that the way he it was ballsy to go out there and publicly dress down a reporter, but the reasoning behind it is perfect, right? Like Kevin Hayes was facing vociferous treatment from the public, and for him to go out publicly then and say, this is such a ridiculous story that I'm gonna come at the guy in the crowd here who specifically is responsible for that, you know, and go hard at him. And if the show was affiliated with the team, it's, to me, that shows a certain amount of character in a way, like his own brand. But it's just, you know, again, like you said, right, on the level of the other coaches of the teams that are really doing really, really well this year, it's, you know, it's not, he would be on my 5-person ballot, but I don't think he cracks 3. But yeah. I think, yeah, I don't know if you have anyone else we would want to throw in there, but he's the one I kind of wanted to mention as an honorable mention, I suppose.
Trying to think of more, but like it's just more of the obvious guys, right? Like Bruce Cassidy's done a great job with Vegas.
Yeah. Yep.
Jim Montgomery
he came to mind.
With Boston. Yep. Great coach. Like it's the same guys, right? Pretty much every single year. So I think just specific to this year, I'm pretty happy with the top 3 I have. I think it's the 2 Ricks that are one and 2. Which one that's going to be will be determined at the end of the season, but they're both really close.
Yeah, if I had to put on my NHL hat, I think Rick Tocchet wins, but it should be really close. I'm not sure it will be close, but I think it could be. So let's move on. This one I'm sure will go over super well. We're gonna talk about the Calder Trophy. Now, I think it's closer than people might lead on personally this year. But my ballot would be Connor Bedard at 1, Brock Faber at 2, and Leo Carlsson at 3. And I mean, for me, you know, Connor Bedard this season is very much what I expected last year, right? Like as a rookie NHL center at 18 years old, that's a big job on a team as bad as Chicago. it's a tough job. It's a tough gig. And he was never sort of the defensive guy, right? Like that was never his job in junior. It's never had to be his job. He's a give him the puck, go and shoot it type of guy. And when that's not happening, he kind of is learning how to do that stuff on the fly. So his defensive numbers, when you look, are not good, right? Like this season, even relative to a bad team, they're not good. But you see just how much he electrifies people, how he's played, especially in the offensive zone, how exciting he is, the kinds of goals he's scored. To me, it's close to me between him and Faber, but I think that Bedard coming in and doing what he's done and working the way he's worked with the Chicago Blackhawks this year, I think is worthy of consideration. And for Brock Faber, I mean, what can you say? Like he's playing what feels like a half an hour a night on a team that is really struggling. But when he's on the ice, you could be forgiven if you thought they were doing a lot better than they were. The goaltending for Minnesota has not been great. But Brock Faber, like he's such a great example of why you need to really pay attention to how players play rather than looking at the score sheet. Like the way Brock Faber gets around the ice and the way he can change directions and the mobility he has and the ability to, not just throw his weight around and be sort of that heavy physical guy, but also just, safe, dependable defending at a high level in the NHL, playing a bajillion minutes a night. It's really hard for a defenseman to win a Calder trophy, but I think he is the closest we've seen in a long time to deserving it. And then the third one, I went back and forth on about 7 different guys for this and watched some tape on some guys. I went as deep as thinking like Dmitry Voronkov deserved a look. But I mean, and then I always kept going back to Leo Carlsson, especially it might be just relative to my expectations of him. But I think that when he's played for Anaheim, again, a team that's been struggling, he's been a very, very bright spot. The Ducks have reason to be, the Ducks fans maybe have reason to be a little bit disappointed with guys like Trevor Zegras having the season that he's having, losing Jamie Drysdale for a guy who won't be on the team until at least the end of this year. And I think with Leo Carlsson, he's been sort of the opposite. He's been a really, really impressive player at both ends, more of a regular in the lineup. He's scoring at a pretty good rate. I don't think he wins. I don't think he's the guy who should get the Calder Trophy. But if I had to pick one to go on the Calder ballot, I think it would be him. So for me, Bedard, Faber, Carlsson, and I feel like it'll be similar to the Jack Adams, where Connor Bedard will just win the Calder Trophy, but it should be closer than I think it could be. So I don't know if you have a different ballot or what, but
it's very similar. It's very similar. Yeah. The top 2 is the same, and for me, it's Bedard, Faber, Fantilli. Connor Bedard, as you said, just an electrifying player, and he's come in and looked awesome on a not so good team. Like, he's just fantastic. The way he plays is just so much fun, and you see all the creativity he has. You see the shot that he has. All the things he can do at such a young age. It's super impressive. Like, he's a truly elite player. Like, he's going to get there. It's just hilarious to watch him. He's born in, 2005? And he's doing this in the NHL already.
Yeah, he doesn't turn 19 until next July.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
It is crazy. And then with Brock Faber, I absolutely agree. The kid is awesome. He moves around the ice so well. He's good at closing gaps. He's just fantastic. He's just a player that's really smart and can defend really well. And he's done it on a team that you mentioned does not have a lot of good defenders and has had some struggles with goaltending. Marc-Andre Fleury's older now. Philip Gustafson's been hurt this year at times, and he's easing his way back in. But I think a lot of it's been because he's been hurt.
Yeah.
And, like, Faber's done an awesome job. Like, if you had told me that that Brock Faber would be this good, you'd look at the Kevin Fiala trade in a way different light than we did when we first saw it. Because that trade looked really, really bad. And Brock Faber is making it look manageable. Like, that's a really good piece back in return, and it's a piece that not that he's necessarily as good as Kevin Fiala, but it's not like he's that far off where we're really looking at this trade as a massive loss. Minnesota is in cap what's a good word? Heck, that's a good one.
I think you can say the real word on
All
the
right,
internet
cap
nowadays, right?
hell.
Cap
Let's
hell, yeah.
go.
Sure.
Yeah, they're in cap hell. And the fact that they were able to get a prospect that they're paying close to minimum for instead of having to pay Kevin Fiala multi-million dollars like for a bunch of
Right.
years. Obviously, you'd want to have paid him if you had the money, but they couldn't, and they made the best out of a bad situation, and Brock Faber's been really, really good. And then for me, I picked Adam Fantilli for third. I just love Adam Fantilli. Watching the Columbus Blue Jackets can be depressing, and he's one of the only good things on that team, and he's doing it at a young age. He plays a very fast brand of hockey, which I've mentioned 90,000 times is my style of hockey. And he's just awesome. Like, he can rip it. I've seen him strip the puck off Austin Matthews already a couple of times in his career, which is not something you say about 19-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can tell that guy is going to have a really awesome career ahead of him. And in part, you can see it because he's had such a great season.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the thing about this season is there's a lot of guys who could slot in on that number 3, I think. Like you said, Fantilli, Marco Rossi, I think, deserves a little bit of consideration. Luke Hughes, another one,
Right,
a guy who's had
one.
a really good year. Connor Zary has come out of nowhere. I wouldn't put him on my ballot after having watched him in Calgary, but he could be there. Logan Cooley has had a really good year.
If Joe Woll hadn't been hurt, he would have been right in that conversation because he has been awesome this year.
Yep. Logan Cooley. Pavel Minchukov is another one who's been a really impressive player. There's a lot. And so but I still do think that it's the Bedard versus Faber thing. So we'll see. But I get the feeling that it'll probably be less close than it should be just based on how good Brock Faber's been. But and it depends on how Bedard finishes the year. He's been hurt a little bit, but a strong second half. Who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, it's going to be about if he plays enough now in order to see if he should really be cemented as the Calder Trophy winner. Because there are times where guys get hurt in a year that they definitely would win, but they don't play enough to actually get the award. Or even if they do meet the minimum games required, there's still writers will not see enough of a sample size or whoever votes on it. But I think
which
it's
is ass.
Yeah, right. But
like Connor McDavid didn't win the Calder because he was injured most of that for a large portion of that season, but he was outstanding that season from what I remember.
Oh yeah, he was ridiculous. But that's the way these awards go sometimes.
Such is life.
Hopefully Connor Bedard can get enough games in where we get a fair race.
Well, we can move on. We'll go to the Selke Trophy, which is awarded to the best defensive forward while still being a great performer offensively. This one is tricky all the time.
Easily the toughest one. Easily the toughest award.
Evaluating how a forward defends is a little bit tricky. But I feel pretty good about my 3 personally. So my 3 are Nick Suzuki of the Montreal Canadiens, number 1, Alex Barkov, number 2 of the Florida Panthers, and Brandon Hagel of the Tampa Bay Lightning, number 3. It's, again, like I said, it's tricky. But with Nick Suzuki, I've watched the Habs quite a bit this year. And I've been incredibly impressed with Nick Suzuki's impact. He's just such a smart, puck-moving guy who also just reads play defensively so well, gets body positioning well, he's very selfless, and certainly is a big factor that enables Cole Caulfield to play the way he plays. He's always that breakout pass option from a guy like Slafkovsky, who, always manages to find him. Just such a great glue guy for that line when he's on the ice. I imagine what Montreal would be like without Nick Suzuki on the team right now, and I don't really know what I would want to think. Data-wise, he's got one of the best defensive impacts relative to his team in the entire league, and it's been quite good relative to league average. So I get the feeling that Suzuki's a guy who, may not be like the trendiest or sexiest pick right now, but might be a guy who just has a great two-way game for multiple seasons and then finally wins a Selke. But for me, I think he deserves at least a strong look based on how he's played, but it's also very difficult to vote for a guy who's the best defensive forward on a team that has the, let's see, second most goals against in the Eastern Conference. But that being said, I think that Suzuki is a main driver of not making that number worse. Alex Barkov, I mean, he's the guy now perennially in there, and I think he deserves it. And this year, I think he deserves it again as well. Just a guy, again, he's more, to me, it's more of that he's a high-end offensive player, but certainly no slouch defensively, and it's just sort of a different balance. Again, just a really, really smart, super skilled for a big guy, but also uses his body really effectively. He plays that Florida Panthers style hockey while also being very offensive. And I've liked him whenever I've caught the Panthers this year quite a bit. And the third one, Brandon Hagel in Tampa. I will admit I was wrong about Brandon Hagel when he was traded from Chicago. I thought that what they paid for him was a little bit nuts, but I am older. Certainly the value of a great two-way player, a guy who can score at a solid rate, but also will give you everything in your own end and really sort of try to plug as many holes as he can. I think that a guy like Brandon Hagel is certainly deserving of that. Again, it's just, to me, it's guys who give you a lot in your own end while also can really transport the puck, finish in the offensive zone, and sort of glue a line together. I think Suzuki and Barkov maybe are better glue guys than Hagel, but in terms of just being that guy who you throw over the boards and you're going to get good results no matter what at both ends of the ice, I think Hagel deserves a look. And I think you had some disagreement with me on this. I could be wrong.
It's similar. And you definitely swayed me quite a bit, because I originally did not have Nick Suzuki on my ballot, but then I went back and watched him a bit and just, yeah, I see it. For me, it's Barkov number one. He's just so good, man. He's got that dog. He's one of those players where you just watch him go, and you can't really find that big of a hole in his game at all. He's, like, to me, what separates him as the number one option, personally, of all those guys I had on there, because I also had Sean Couturier at 3, he's the best offensively of those guys. And at the end of the day, it's a two-way award, right?
Yep.
And Barkov is putting up tons and tons of points because he's got better offensive ability than those guys. And to me, it's just like, not that he's going to be a shoo-in every year, because I think there's some really good players that we'll see come up in this conversation quite a lot. Like, honestly, I'm not going to be surprised if the next couple of years we have Barkov, Nico Hischier, who I really thought about, but he just didn't play enough. Nick Suzuki, Austin Matthews, when he's on his game, is ridiculous. And I considered Matthews, but he just hasn't had the same level of defensive takeover as he's had in previous years. Like, especially in his in the Hart Trophy year, he was so good defensively too that I was surprised he didn't even get nominated for the finalists of the Selke, because he was that good too. But like
last year he was excellent too in his own end. Yeah, that I remember. Like, he took a step there for sure.
Yeah, it's just that, and it's hard because there's a lot of noise around this award too. Like, there's a lot of data that evaluates the defensive impact of forwards or even defenders. Like looking at defense from an analytical perspective can be so hard to really evaluate. Like, I was surfing through Evolving Hockey's charts today just to like get a gauge of, am I going to look crazy when I put these out? And like, I was looking at a Morgan Riley today defensively, and it had him like near league worst, and he's clearly not that. When I watch him, he's awesome. Right. At least nowadays. He used to be, but like, it's difficult to really separate some of the noise sometimes, because there's nothing, at least in my opinion, that you can go back on and look at that'll actually check yourself properly, right?
Yeah, and I think that touches on an interesting subject that has nothing to do with NHL awards, but like, a lot of these player cards and everything are very based on the team results. So a lot of it is based on shots at both ends, or just Corsi at both ends, shot attempts at both ends. Expected goals models, I think, have a lot more going into them. But a big thing that, especially with regards to defense, that you don't really get, like, you get, it's all very end result, right? Shoot the shot, who's shooting it, who's passing it to the shooter, where's the pass going, Where's the pass coming from? Who's the goalie? That's all part of an expected goals model. But defense is also like, how are they at defending the offensive blue line? Do they allow a lot of pressure through there? Do they allow a lot of pressure through the defensive blue line? Defensive zone, like it's not about who hits, but who, breaks up a cycle, who, gets a stick on an errant pass and can get it out of the defensive end, right? Who's passing pucks, but maybe not producing a ton of offense and hitting their targets a lot. Like there's a lot of factors that go into this stuff that make it a lot more difficult to analyze defensive play, especially just going beyond, expected goals says this or this or this. Yeah. There's a lot of factors that go into it as well.
And beyond that, there's also a question about, like, should Suzuki's poor offensive driving be considered when Barkov and others produce more offense with similar defensive numbers? That's the thing about the Selke Award, right? Like, at the end of the day, the description is two-way, right? And I know that analytically, Suzuki's not necessarily a great driver, at least according to the stuff that I saw in Evolving Hockey. But, like, other than Cole Caulfield, who else does he have to drive good results with, right?
He's leading the team in scoring, right? Like nobody is scoring more on his team, but right?
Yep. But also, like, that's why I have Barkov ahead, because at the end of the day, it is a two-way award, and you do have to weight it. It just shouldn't take away from Suzuki being necessarily, like, not considered, because other than Cole Caulfield, he doesn't really have a ton of options.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. But I also will say Alex Barkov does not lead the Florida Panthers in scoring. So there. How about them apples?
He doesn't, but it's like he's just so good, man. The way like it's about the blend, right? And he blends both of those worlds, I think, the best this year.
Sure. Okay, well, I think on that we can move on to one that I think is a little easier. That would be the Vezina trophy to the best goaltender of the year. Mine was super easy for me. It took about 8 seconds for me to think about who would be my top three. That would be Connor Hellebuyck, of course, Thatcher Demko, and Ilya Sorokin. So I went back because Connor Hellebuyck and the Winnipeg Jets are so far out ahead of their expected amount of goals against based on how they play in front of them that it's not even funny. And yes, Connor Hellebuyck has always been a guy who outperforms what is expected in front of him because he's a really good goaltender. But this season has been one for the ages so far for him. Like, he is a guy who I think if he holds up this pace for the rest of the year in terms of goals saved above expected and all those goalie metrics, goals saved above average, he'll be ahead of the highest number in that metric since the analytics era sort of started. And I think that was Carey Price. When he had that one great season, I think it was 2014, 2013, sometime in there, where he just had an outstanding year. And it's not even close. Like, I think his goals saved above average was 30 that year, and Hellebuyck is on pace for 40. So I don't know if it's going to stay that good, but if it does, I mean, it's one of the best seasons we've seen out of a goaltender in a really, really, really long time. So he's obviously the number one pick for me. Thatcher Demko, too, I think obviously deserves a look. Similar, but sort of scaled down from Hellebuyck. He's been great all year. A big reason why Vancouver is doing what they're doing, outside of their top unit, just firing on all cylinders. So he would be on there too. My number three, of course, Ilya Sorokin. Again, similar to taking a guy like Suzuki off the Habs, take Ilya Sorokin off of the New York Islanders. I mean, they're not a horrible looking team, but I don't know what they're going to look like. They do not stay in the same position they are. Like, looking at the standings, the Islanders have 130 goals, which is the same amount as Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. They're way ahead of, say, Washington, but Ilya Sorokin has really kept them in the season a lot, and they're scratching, sniffing a playoff spot, and I think a lot of that comes down to him. So yeah, that's my ballot. I didn't think it was too complicated. I imagine yours is extremely similar.
It's the same. It's the exact same. Yeah, I just completely agree, man. Connor Hellebuyck is insane, and he's been insane for years. The level of consistency that he's had across multiple seasons is just unreal. But even then, you look at this year, and like you said, he is doing things that no other goalie has done ever, possibly, right? And he's just a ridiculous goaltender that's super calm, super composed in the net. He's just awesome to watch. And the reason I put him ahead of a guy like Thatcher Demko, he's the best player on Winnipeg. I don't think that's a hot take. Like, Connor Hellebuck, in my mind, is easily the best player on Winnipeg. Thatcher Demko is not the best player on Vancouver, though he is very, very good. And so when I look at it from that perspective, I think Connor Hellebuck is carrying the Winnipeg Jets more than a guy like Thatcher Demko is. Because even then, like, you see Casey DeSmith come in time to time, and he does pretty well on those given nights where they have him as like starting a net, right? So for me, I just lean Connor Hellebuck. But I also went with Ilya Sorokin because, as we discussed, what are the New York Islanders without Ilya Sorokin? A team that's going to concede a lot of goals.
Yeah.
So that's where that came in for me. And one thing else I'm going to mention, because one of the sayings about the Jack Adams Award and the Vezina Trophy Award is that usually you get a very similar result. The guy who wins the coach of the year is usually the coach with the Vezina Trophy winner. And on both of our ballots, that is very much the case.
Yeah, show me a good coach and I'll show you a good goalie, and show me a good goalie, whatever. Yeah, that's the thing. And just for the record, the highest goals saved above average since I was born, which was 1990, actually belongs to Curtis Joseph in 92-93 with a whopping 57.4. Connor Hellebuck is on pace for 40, and I also need to correct myself. Linus Ullmark last year crossed 40, and Igor Shesterkin the year before also crossed 40, but no one in the NHL is even coming close to that amount this year. And I know that's not the best metric, but it's what we got. And I just thought it was interesting that Curtis Joseph, in his second full season of the NHL, after being a free agent signing out of college, took the league by storm and did not win the Vezina. Anyway, we can move on because that was dead easy.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to do one that's a little bit more difficult and maybe a little bit more controversial, and that's the Norris Trophy. So for me, the Norris Trophy is not easy, and I feel like it's another one that's not going to be super close, but it probably should be. I would put Cale Makar at number 1, then Quinn Hughes at number 2, and Miro Heiskanen at 3. So I get that Quinn Hughes, I mean, if Quinn Hughes wins the Norris, he deserves it, right? Like, this is one of those things where it's like, both of these guys deserve it. But I hate to be the watch the games guy, but you watch Cale Makar, and it's like he is a space alien from another planet that was like built to play hockey. And Quinn Hughes is an extremely talented defenseman. He's taken a step, I think, this year with just how he uses his footwork and how he uses his speed and the skill level to not only produce more offensively, but chip in better defensively, which was a criticism of his game as long as I can remember. And he's really grown into a tremendous defenseman, and he's a big reason why Vancouver is doing what they're doing. But I look at Cale Makar, and again, I just see such an incredibly high-level guy at both ends of the ice. I think the data supports that Makar's had a higher impact on the game at both ends. Makar does have some really talented players to play with as well, for sure. But there's just another level to Makar. I just saw the comment. He's a mutant. Like, he's a guy who is just from another planet. And Quinn Hughes, elite NHL player, but from another planet, I think supersedes elite NHL player having a career year. And unfortunately for Miro Heiskanen, like, he's having a fantastic season in Dallas himself, but it's just not on the same level as those other two guys. And I think there are a ton of guys that I think you could give this award to that have had really good years playing defense this year. But I get the feeling that Cale Makar is the guy. Noah Dobson came to mind. Morgan Riley also, I think, has been having a really good year. Vince Dunn has been having an excellent year in Seattle. I think he's leading them in scoring, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, he is.
Which is wild. But yeah, Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes, they're almost 10 points ahead of Noah Dobson in the points race for defensemen. And they're both over, I think, 35% involvement in their team's offense when you look at the data that I've got, which is just amazing. Like, they're just playing extremely well. But I think just giving it to the guy who is, it takes you 30 seconds watching Cale Makar to go, holy crap, this is like to me, he's a perennial Norris guy. And I feel like this season is no different. So as much as I love Miro Heiskanen and everything, I think it's got to be Makar Hughes.
Yep, and I don't disagree. My ballot is very similar, only I swapped out Miro Heiskanen for Noah Dobson. Cale Makar is a mutant. He is from another world. He is the modern-day Bobby Orr, and he is just disgusting. Just watching him play is ridiculous. It's not fair. How can a guy be that fast?
It's not fair. Yeah,
right-handed. Like, that's what everybody's looking for, a right-shot defenseman like that who can just skate circles around every single person, defend gracefully, and create so much offense. And do it on the rush, too. Like, this guy is something out of this world. He really is.
Yeah.
He just is.
He's like, I don't know if anyone here has seen the movie Asteroid City, the Wes Anderson movie, but he's like the alien in that. You can't do anything about it. He comes down, does what he wants, and just gets up and leaves. Like, he's just there. You're just in awe when you see him play, which I think goes a long way. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think this one's too complicated, but who knows what'll actually happen. Yeah. I think Quinn Hughes it's gonna be hard to knock Quinn Hughes on a grand scale. I think it's gonna be hard to knock him off. But I think Cale Makar deserves it.
Yeah, and I really wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the year it's Quinn Hughes winning the award because Makar's won it.
Yeah.
Right? And at some level, they try and spread the love, which I understand, but it's also like, just give it to the best player, right? And Cale Makar, I feel like if he was healthy every single year, like he misses a couple of games every single year, and that's kind of the argument. Oh, well, he didn't play a full 82, right? He could have 3 Norris trophies at this point, and he only has 1.
Right.
But yeah, I think who you mentioned as well as potential candidates are good. I would also throw in Josh Morrissey as a guy who's been really good this year.
Yep.
But yeah, and Adam Fox is always awesome. Like, it can't.
Yeah, that's true.
Can't not say Adam Fox, and Charlie McAvoy is really good too, but he probably never will win it because he's just not as offensive as the other guys. Like, it's just the truth. The Norris is actually just a who scores the most points award most of the time.
Right. Well, to me, it's like who can challenge Cale Makar this season. Like, that's what it seems to be becoming. Because he's sustained this type of level of play for a couple of years now. I remember I got into an argument with a guy on my hockey team a few years ago because he kept saying over and over they should play Cale Makar at wing because he doesn't play defense. And I just was like, you do not pay attention to hockey games when you watch. Like,
you're
you
dumb.
Just see the
answer to that. You are dumb.
You see the points and assume he just doesn't play defense, but it's like, nah, bro, that's just wrong. But anyway, I mean, yeah, you mentioned Charlie McAvoy. He was the first guy that came to mind for number 3, but yeah, it's just, there's a lot of good choices for number 3, 4, and 5 on a ballot, but I think 1 and 2 are locked up.
Yeah, and you also got to have offense in order to be the best defenseman. As dumb as that sounds, you got to be able to contribute both ways to win that award.
Yeah, you can't just give it to William or Simon Benoit.
It can't just go to Jacob Slavin, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, it can't be Jacob Slavin. We're gonna move on and talk about the Maurice Richard Trophy. So we kind of thought it would be fun to think about who could finish with the most amount of goals at the end of the year.
Yep.
So I threw down. I mean, Austin Matthews is the easy answer. I think that he's a guy who, I mean, he went on a stretch this year where he really had trouble scoring goals, but he figures it out and he ends up scoring in bunches. Nikita Kucherov is also on my list, and I threw David Pasternak on there. So you might be a little bit surprised to not see Sam Bennett on there.
Reinhart.
Sam Reinhart. Sorry, they got a bunch of Sams on the same team.
I'd be very surprised to see Sam Bennett on that list.
Yes, Sam Bennett's not on that list, no. But anyway, yeah, Sam Reinhart. So the reason I left Sam Reinhart off, the guy's shooting 27% right now, which is literally just, it's out of control. Brock Besser is at 22%, and a lot of people are saying he's going to regress. And David Pastrnak is shooting 12%, and I believe his career shooting percentage is quite a bit higher than that.
It's like closer to 18, I think.
Yeah. So if he scores, say, that's 50% more than what he's done so far. So if he scores 26 goals in the first half of the year, that's another, 26 plus another, half. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's probably going to score, cross 50, maybe approach 60 goals this year if he regresses back to his positive shooting percentage. But I mean, Austin Matthews, I think, he's 6 ahead of Nikita Kucherov, 1 ahead of Sam Reinhart, who is outshooting everybody. I think it's going to be tough for Matthews to lose this unless he gets injured, because he's a guy that makes a hat trick look easy some nights. He's not going to give you a tremendous amount every single night, but on nights where he scores and he's feeling it and the puck's going in, he's gonna pile them on. So I get the feeling that he's gonna get there. In terms of thinking about how many, I think you wanted to talk about how many goals.
How many goals does Austin Matthews score this year?
I'm going to put the number at 57. He's at 34 now.
That is so
he's on pace.
low.
He's on pace for 68. He's streaky. I don't know if he gets to 60. He probably should, but I don't know.
Wow, that's the biggest discrepancy that we have.
This goal pace, though, is out of control. 34 goals through 41 games is nuts. So he's on pace for almost 70 goals.
Yeah.
I think the likelihood of getting to 70 goals is pretty limited. Who knows what's going to happen with the Toronto Maple Leafs from here on out? And again, Matthews is a guy who could go 4 or 5 games without a goal. And if he does that once or twice, that's going to make it very, very tough to score 36 goals to hit 70 by the end of the year. So I don't know. 60, I think, is possible, but I don't know. I thought in my head, I'll say 60, but maybe a touch less. And it also gives guys like Kucherov and Pastrnak a chance to catch up, because I think those guys will break 50, I think, pretty easily.
See, so I have a very similar list, but for me, it's Austin Matthews, David Pastrnak, and Sam Reinhart. At some level, Sam Reinhart's so far ahead right now in second that I just don't see how he's going to get overtaken completely. But I think David Pastrnak has another level that he'll hit, especially from a goal-scoring perspective. That guy just finds ways to score goals all the time. In terms of what I think Matthews is going to hit, I really think he's going to hit 65. Because this is a guy who scored 51 goals in 50 games. He's done it before. In that season where he won the Hart Trophy and won the Rocket Richard, he had a 67 goal pace. But he played
Toronto Maple Leafs 1967.
Well, something like that. But he played 10 less games than Connor McDavid, who scored 66 last year?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, right? I really believe that Matthews is going to hit 65, and I wouldn't be surprised. My upper bound, I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if somehow this guy pulls out 70, because he just scores in bunches. There are times where he goes cold. I fully admit that. But then all of a sudden, he has 2 hat tricks back to back. And then all of a sudden, he's just scoring. And it all happens so quickly with Austin Matthews. As soon as he finds the back of the net, he's just so much better on a given night that it's hard to really say that he won't pass the 60 goal mark. And I also think at this point in time, we've seen that NHL scoring has gone up. Goals, assists, in recent years, they've gone up. And I really do think that that's going to be a consistent trend that we see going forward here. So I really, honestly, I expect 60 goal seasons out of somebody every year going forward at this point. At least for the next 4 or 5 years, I expect to see that plateau, that mark hit. So I really, really think that Matthews is going to be more 65, 68 bound, personally.
Yeah, that's the same pace he's done for the first 41 games. I guess, I don't know. The way I see it is more it's kind of like Sam Reinhart's shooting percentage. It's if you're in school and you're at midterm season, you have a 95. there's a lot of room for you to slowly come down. You might still finish with like an 88, 89, 90. But maintaining like historically insane levels like this, I think is tough. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm probably wrong. I'll admit I'm probably wrong. But who knows?
I mean, it's possible he doesn't hit it, but like I think that's more going to be down to a wrist injury or him just not playing games rather than him not being able to go out there and do it given the time and proper deployment, which he will get so long as he's not injured.
Well, and I mean, the other thing too, I think that works in his favor is that he has far fewer power play goals than a lot of guys that are up here. Like Sam Reinhart has 16 power play goals. Matthews has 9. And he has 25 even strength goals, and that's 5 higher than the next highest player, which is Sidney Crosby at 20.
Yeah.
So he's like, and he's always been the guy in the NHL who is far and away the best even strength goal scorer in the league. Like that is indisputable. So if the power play stuff can sort of improve, like he only has 14 points on the power play. Nikita Kucherov has 33. Like if that kind of regresses there, then I could see it. So we'll see. I mean, I fully admit I could be wrong. I just threw a number out there because I don't know. 60 is really hard.
But we've seen it done 2 years in a row, man. I just think it's going to happen again. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Austin Matthews hitting 65, hitting even 70. Like that's really possible to me. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's very possible.
Now watch, they're going to sit him for 5 games leading into the playoffs when he's at 59 goals to rest him for the playoffs.
Oh, but you remember what happened in his Hart Trophy year? They got him to 60 and then he sat out the rest of the year.
Right. Yeah.
So he'll get to 60 at least.
Yep. And have a seat.
Yep.
60 and then seat. Okay. So we can move on then. And we'll talk about the Art Ross Trophy. This one's a little bit easier. My Art Ross Trophy ballot, I mean, McKinnon and Kucherov are kind of running away with it. Those two guys are well ahead of the rest of the league in terms of points per game. They're sitting at around 1.6, 1.65. The only person that can hold a candle to them is Connor McDavid, who had a slow start to the year, uncharacteristically slow. But down the stretch, I think I did the math on this, like since in the last 20 games, if you look at his point pace, it's around I think he had 38 points in his last 20 games, something like that. And so he's on a ridiculous pace. And I think if I extend it to the full season, I think he hits about 125 points or something like that. I could be wrong. Maybe 130. I don't know if he's going to catch up, but it's because there's also a long way to go. Like that's a 14 point. He's 14 points behind Kucherov and McKinnon. But similar to Austin Matthews, right? Like he could have a 2-week period where he's got 8 goals. Connor McDavid could have a 2-week period where he has 18 points, right? So who knows? But I think for me it's going to be Kucherov, McKinnon, and McDavid. And then I think those guys, those 2 main players, Kucherov and McKinnon, I mean, they're at a 1.6 points per game, so that's about 130 points in a season. Maybe hit 135 or so down the stretch. Maybe they play some teams that have sold some of their better players and they filled the net a few times. But I think Connor McDavid will give him a run for the money. So I'm interested to see what you think, because I think you probably have something very similar.
Oh, very, very similar, actually.
Yeah.
So mine is almost the exact same. I just put Connor McDavid at 1 because he's going to do it. It's Connor McDavid. The Oilers have won 11 games in a row. You can't tell me that Connor McDavid's not going to go out there and just absolutely torch the entire league and find a way to end up with the most points at the end of the year. You just can't tell me that. He's going to do it. It's Connor McDavid. He's the greatest player I've ever seen in my life.
Watch me tell you he's not going to do it.
Well, then too bad. He's going to do it, Will, and he's going to make you look dumb, all right? He's going to smile. He's going to smile or make like his typical angry Connor face, and then go score like, I don't know, man. He'll score like 70 points to finish the year. Like he'll end up with 70 more points in 42 games because he's a mutant.
That would certainly be a lot of fun.
Dude, he is the best player ever. I'm sorry, like there's no disputing he's the best player ever. Wayne Gretzky, awesome. Don't get me wrong. I think Wayne Gretzky probably the greatest ever because he was so far ahead of everybody else. But Connor McDavid, easily the most talented player in NHL history. And Wayne Gretzky also scored on goalies that stood up, okay? It's not. There's no comparison. There's no comparison.
I adore watching Wayne Gretzky play hockey. It's awesome.
He's awesome, though. It's true.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't argue that. But I spent some time in the offseason watching classic NHL games that they posted on YouTube. And during the pandemic, I did the same. And those Oilers teams in the 80s were like the only teams in the entire league that were playing like an NHL team plays like these days. Like, it was crazy. Like, just blowing by everyone. Paul Coffey going end to end like 8 times a game.
Yeah.
Wayne Gretzky was like the only person who seemed to understand that you could trick people into thinking you're going to do a thing, and then he goes and does another thing. Like,
the master of anticipation. That's what Wayne Gretzky was, and he was so much smarter than everybody else on the ice. Yeah. Connor McDavid is just so much faster, so much more skilled, so much more creative than everybody else on the ice.
Yep.
He's the best of all time. Really. Gretzky is Gretzky in that light, better than everybody by miles. Connor McDavid, better than everybody by a mile, but way higher level of competition.
So for me, I love Nathan MacKinnon. Like, I get it. I see what I agree on Connor McDavid for sure. But like, Nathan MacKinnon also is just so good.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you watch him play and he does everything you need him to do. He's a hard defensive player. He's a great offensive rush guy. He quarterbacks rushes so well. Intense guy. And he like
tenacious. Again, like, he's awesome.
I'll be thinking about the goal he scored at the World Cup on Henrik Lundqvist in overtime for the rest of my life. I'll be probably thinking about the goal he scored against Toronto the other night for the rest of my life, where he just stopped up, sent some defenseman for a complete ride into the corner. I don't know who that was. I think it was TJ Brody or someone. Either way,
yeah, I think you're right.
Nathan MacKinnon, you know, just his ability to just make you look dumb while also playing just unbelievable hockey at both ends. Like, Connor McDavid is the most exciting player I think I've ever seen in my life, for sure.
Easily.
Fastest, speed and skill in conjunction. I don't think there's anyone that can hold a candle to
brain
him.
Too. That's another part of it.
Yep. And he's not a guy who just floats around the perimeter at 100 miles an hour throwing pucks on net. Like, he doesn't just do that. He cuts into the middle. He attacks the net. He does everything you want a goal scorer to do, but he's also a remarkable playmaker. But I mean, I don't know. It's similar to McKinnon. I think Kucherov also is just a guy who is just lethal, but I do see an argument where, let's say, Tampa's power play maybe slows down, which might flow through Kucherov a lot. His point production might slow down a little bit, but I don't know. I see where you're coming from with McDavid, but I'm not leaving MacKinnon out of it at all.
Oh, I don't have him out of it. Like, I think it's going to be super close. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's going to be just a few points difference between all those guys. The reason I have Kucherov ahead of MacKinnon mainly comes down to the fact that Tampa's really battling for their lives to make the playoffs here. The Avalanche are not. MacKinnon will probably get time to rest throughout the year. And especially towards the tail half of the year, I think he's going to get some more time to rest. McDavid has been in a bit of a playoff battle, and the Oilers have worked their way right back into that conversation. And it's astonishing how fast they've been able to do it. I just don't bet against Connor McDavid. And with Kucherov, he's won the Art Ross before. I just look at that guy, and I know he's going to put up tons of points. Like, I think he could end with 130 this year. I wouldn't be surprised if McDavid has like 131, and then you get like Nathan MacKinnon at 125, something like that. Like, that's kind of the gauge. Not necessarily exact totals, but I think it's going to be those three guys for sure that end up with one of those guys ending up with that award. Could be any of them. But I'm never going to bet against Connor McDavid. Never going to bet against him.
Fair enough. So to continue that discussion, Hart Trophy.
Same names.
Sort of. My Hart Trophy ballot for the year leads with Nathan MacKinnon. I just think he's been outstanding. But God, it was close for me between him and Connor Hellebuck. Connor Hellebuck has been having just an unbelievable season. And again, the Winnipeg Jets are playing well. You know, you can't fault them. I think they're coached well. I think they play well. They've got a pretty deep team. They're a good team, but they are not where they are without Connor Hellebuck. I've got a sneeze coming, so I apologize if I'm about to explode.
Excellent.
Oh God.
I can fill.
There we go. I got it out of me. But yeah, I think with Nathan MacKinnon, you could also make the same argument. Like, what's the Colorado Avalanche without Nathan MacKinnon?
Cale
I mean,
Makar.
obviously, they've got Cale Makar.
Mikko Rantanen.
Sure. They're still a great team without him, but he's a major part of that and one of the league's leading scorers and doing it at even strength and on the power play and doing all the fun stuff you need him to do. And I threw Kucherov in there again because, like you said, Tampa's fighting for their lives to stay in the playoffs, and it's not, they're not out of it. But it's the East. We've said a few times, the East down the stretch is probably going to be just machine. Like, it's just going to be I don't know what the term would be, but just a disaster for so many teams just battling it out. A bit of a war of attrition perhaps down the stretch.
Oh yeah.
And Kucherov being among the league leaders on a team that probably desperately needs him to be a league leader in scoring to make the playoffs. I think he deserves at least a little bit of recognition for a Hart Trophy nomination. But to me, it's a real toss-up between MacKinnon and Hellebuck. But if McDavid catches up and scores a bunch of points and takes the Oilers into the playoffs and they do good, then maybe you throw him in there. But I think MacKinnon, Hellebuck, Kucherov are the guys I'm going with for now.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I put McDavid in my list. With me right now, Nathan MacKinnon's my number one. He's just been disgusting this year. He's just doing his thing. He's Nathan MacKinnon. He plays fast. He's rambunctious, tenacious. He's that guy. He's got that dog in him. All right, all those cliches that we use, but it's true. He's just fantastic. And I got Kucherov next because think about where the Tampa Bay Lightning would be without Nikita Kucherov right now. They would be probably way lower in the standings, possibly one of the worst teams in the East with the way that they've performed this year. Kucherov has been so key to them sustaining their level this year. Like, Vasilevsky hasn't played so much this year, and when he has played, he hasn't been as good as he has been in previous years because Tampa's kind of run him into the ground a bit. Mm-hmm. So they've really leaned on Kucherov for offense, and he's been disgusting. And then I have McDavid at 3 right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if he comes and wins the entire award because that's what Connor McDavid does.
Me neither.
Like, I don't need to repeat myself. I said everything. He is the greatest player I've ever seen. Because I was not alive for Wayne Gretzky. Not alive
That's
for
true.
a single game of Wayne Gretzky.
That is
He retired in what, 1999?
Yeah, 99.
Yeah, I'm born in 2000, so never saw Wayne Gretzky.
I watched.
Never even been
I watched
alive
his last
during
NHL
Wayne
game.
Gretzky played.
I watched it live. That's so crazy.
So,
oh my God.
So I can easily say that Connor McDavid's the greatest player that I've ever been alive for, and it's just the truth.
Yes.
He is disgusting. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up winning the award at the end of the year. They may knock him for not having the greatest start this season and just give it to somebody else because they like giving it to other people to help build their Hall of Fame careers. But Connor McDavid is just a god. So right now it's MacKinnon, and I have Kucherov as well because what would the Tampa Bay Lightning be without him? But McDavid, man, so good. So good.
Right. All right. Well, I mean, I guess that concludes our main awards. Well, I know, but yes. the actual NHL awards, but we made up our own award. I said this to you last night. I'm surprised the NHL doesn't have a most improved player award because also the discussion around it would be so intolerable on Twitter because of the way people interpret improved.
Yep.
Like you have a completely different interpretation to me, mostly it seems, of what the most improved player of the last year looks like. But my 3 picks for guys that would be probably considered most improved in the year, I'm going to go with Marco Rossi with Minnesota. I'm obviously biased, but I don't care. We'll go over it in a second. I'm going to throw Joey Decord on there as well, the Seattle Kraken goaltender, and Noah Dobson, New York Islanders defender Noah Dobson. So with Marco Rossi, I mean, this is a guy people were writing off. The number of times I got asked last season when I was doing streams about, what if Marco Rossi's this? What do you think about Marco Rossi's 1 point in 15 games playing with Brandon Duhaime and Connor Dewar. What do you think he's a bust? Do you think Jack Quinn's better than him now? It's like, well, give it some time, and if you watch him play last year, fourth line minutes, he wasn't bad. It just wasn't really going his way. And a lot came down to him doing a lot on his own because there wasn't a whole lot of offensive creation happening around him. This season, he's worked his way up the lineup. He's a first-line winger now with guys like Kaprizov, and he does not look out of place there at all. He's scoring at a really good rate. He's an incredibly hard worker at both ends of the ice, a guy who, honestly, if you want to think about a Masterton Trophy award, like Marco Rossi probably should have a look, because that guy, was so sick in a bad way during the COVID pandemic, not that it's over, but during the main era of the pandemic, he was the guy that kind of really took a big hit health-wise. And now he's turned out to be a guy who belongs, I think, in a top 6 in the NHL, and is a very, very admirable player to watch. And I think that he's a good option for this if this award existed. Joey Decord, I mean, we're halfway through the year, so there's plenty of time for Decord to be not what he's been. But this is a guy who bounced around a couple of teams, if I'm not mistaken, has been on waivers here and there. He's been just all over the league, and one of these guys who's just having a bonkers season. He had a pretty good year last year in the minors. He had a really good year the previous year in the minors, but before that, with Ottawa, he wasn't doing much. He was a castaway for Ottawa, and now being given an extended look in the NHL, at least for now, he seems to be running with it, especially on a team where their other option is Philip Grubauer or Chris Dreger's there too. But Philip Grubauer is just, compared to Joey Decord this season, a non-option. So he goes on that ballot as well for me, just a guy who kind of came out of nowhere to really sort of steal a job and do extremely well at it, and probably might get some consideration for a Vezina, especially if he maintains this for the rest of the year. And then Noah Dobson. I mean, Dobson's been good for a couple of years. I've liked him with the Islanders for a couple of years, but he really seems to have taken a step this year as an offensive guy. He's a lot more, he's pushing a lot more offense on his own, taking a little bit more chances in the offensive zone, a little bit more confident. And it's really paying off. He's a guy who I think doesn't sacrifice his defensive play either these days to chase that offense. Really good puck mover, really good offensive player. And I think he's taken a big step. So if you want to talk about maybe players who are already quite good, but have really sort of had a really, really good season where they've cemented themselves in the top-ish end of the NHL at their position, I think Dobson's part of that. But for me, Marco Rossi and Joey Decord have been just out of nowhere to be amongst some of the more impressive stories this season relative to last year.
Yeah, and this award, this idea, it's so hard to pinpoint exactly who should get consideration, because there's so many different types of players that you can consider for it. And I went for a very different approach. I picked Noah Dobson for my number one because he's been awesome this year and really helped the New York Islanders stabilize quite a bit. Then you look at a guy like Morgan Rielly, who's just come so far defensively. It's true. He used to be one of the worst defenders in the league. I was on a train or on a bandwagon of put Morgan Rielly at forward, please, and the Leafs had enough defensemen at the time to make that work. But now he is truly the star blue liner both ways on that team, offensively and defensively, and he's just been phenomenal. And then Quinn Hughes. Like, it's so hard to even pick who should be number one of that bunch. Maybe not Morgan Rielly, maybe more between Dobson and Quinn Hughes, but Quinn Hughes' shot has come so far this year. He's really created more, like he's a way more threatening player because now he can really rip it, which has helped improve his playmaking because he can fool you into like, you have to try and take away that shot option that he now presents. And then, all of a sudden he's passed the puck off to Elias Pettersson and it's in the back of your net, right? Like that's what Quinn Hughes can do now. So it's kind of crazy. And I thought about Sam Reinhart, but Sam Reinhart is always been an awesome player that's now getting really rewarded and kind of overly rewarded, I think. Like, he's awesome, don't get me wrong, but is he the most improved of the bunch? Like, when I look at Sam Reinhart, do I think he's made such a massive stride in his game? not so much. Like Morgan Rielly is one of the worst defensive players in the league for a long time.
It's true.
That has changed. It is completely changed. Quinn Hughes has really propelled himself into like top 4 defensemen in the league conversation this year. Like he was top 10 kind of guy, but he's moved up like 6 places. And that's a lot when you're talking about the very best of the best. And Noah Dobson's just been awesome. Like, plain and simple, that guy ruined the Leafs in the last game against the Islanders that they played. He scored 4 points. And it's not just because he scored 4 points. He was defending well. He's making a pairing with Alex Romanov work.
True.
Like, that's how good Noah Dobson is, man.
I know you don't like Alex Romanov, but I think he's solid. He's solid, but he's not.
There are times where Alex Romanov frustrates me a lot, right?
Sure.
But like,
of course,
Noah Dobson makes up for a lot of those issues with Alex Romanov.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to me, Noah Dobson goes right up there. And anybody who says that we didn't talk about Evan Bouchard, he sucks. Sorry, guys. No, I'm kidding. But like,
I mean, he's still Evan Bouchard.
I just didn't consider him for anything because like,
the
defending is still too poor. It's too poor. I know there are analytics that'll say, "Oh, he's really good," but did you see how he just left Austin Matthews with a gaping, wide open net? He's just puck watching in that game against Edmonton, right? Like that's just he's not at a Norris caliber level for me. Very talented offensive defenseman, but not a Norris caliber guy. Useful player, but you got to insulate him a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, he has been very, very good this year, but yeah, I agree. Like, I don't think he's part of that. And I certainly don't think I would consider him most improved this year, but yeah, I mean, not. we at least agree on Dobson. That's a plus. That's a plus. So we wanted to take also a couple of minutes before we get to the questions. You can also fire those away as well. But before we get to the questions, we just kind of wanted to have a bigger sort of open-ended discussion about teams that we think at this point of the year, based on what we've seen, because AJ and I watch quite a lot of hockey together.
Yep.
Who could be some real contenders for the Stanley Cup championship this year? So I put down 4 teams that I think deserve a look, and I guess I'll just run them down and then you can fire off yours. But for me, I think the Jets are a genuine contender. I certainly would put the Jets in that conversation. They're just a deep team. They've got a lot of talent up and down the lineup. Not a whole lot of really weak spots, I don't think. And they're having the best goaltending performance out of the entire league this season. And Connor Hellebuyck, I just get the feeling that since the Jets have not always been the most playoff success, have not had the most playoff success out of most teams, I think Connor Hellebuyck's going to be a guy who goes in and just games every single night in the playoffs. And I think he's a guy who could steal games in the playoffs, a guy who will stand on his head if he needs to. And I think that gives the Jets a pretty good chance. On the other hand, in the Western Conference, they're going to be in tough, I think, against Colorado. I think Colorado's a team that's not very controversial to throw in here. Again, they're a strong top-end team. Their depth has been playing well as well. They've got a really good group of 4 defensemen. They might lean a little bit more offensively than I think some certain brands of hockey fans might like, but I don't think that's going to stop them. I think they'll go as far as a guy like Alex Georgiev will take them. And who knows what Alex Georgiev can do in the playoffs. I mean, in the NHL playoffs, sometimes all you need is just good goaltending, consistent goaltending, a guy who will give you a chance to win every night, to use a cliche. But I think Georgiev could be that guy. But for me, I mentioned the Jets first because, in a 7-game series, Jets Avalanche, it would be insane. I think that series would be insane. But the Jets might have trouble with, guys like Makar and Rantanen and McKinnon, but they have Hellebuyck. The Avalanche, might have the advantage people-wise, but getting through Connor Hellebuyck might be a challenge. And with guys like Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers and all those guys that are really good NHL players against Pavel Francouz for one, or Alexander Georgiev, might be a little bit closer than we might think. But yeah, those are the 2 teams that I first wanted to mention. And then staying in the West, I got to shout out Vegas. Like you said earlier, Bruce Cassidy has them playing great hockey. They play that playoff style in the right way. They're heavy, but they're fast and they're physical. They don't overthink the game. They just take chances whenever they can find them. Jack Eichel has been excellent for them consistently. Aiden Hill has been, again, outstanding this season. So I wouldn't count the Vegas Golden Knights out at all. They're a team that I think people weren't really giving the time of day a whole lot at this point last year as potential Stanley Cup favorites.
I wasn't. I will admit.
Yeah,
it.
like
I did
don't.
not.
Yeah.
If you had told me Vegas was going to win the Stanley Cup, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah,
so
and they
it
did.
shows you what I know.
Yeah, we treat ourselves with a lot of respect on this show. We really like to value our own opinions. But yeah, I throw Vegas in there.
Yeah, but I also think that everybody has a right to be called out when they're dumb, and sometimes I am dumb, but so is everybody else. So
not me, never me. No, sir.
Tim Stützle, Will.
Oh,
Tim
yeah,
Stützle.
The guy whose German jersey I have that I notoriously dislike. Anyway, the other team that I wanted to just bring up before I hand this over to AJ for his list is the Boston Bruins. Again, a team like Vegas that I don't think you can ever count out. I think Jim Montgomery, it's not easy when you lose a guy like Patrice Bergeron to just turn around and be still a team that could threaten to win their division. Brad Marchand has sort of carried the torch really, really well. They're getting really good performances from pretty much everyone on the team. They're getting excellent goaltending as well. They've got, if one goalie goes down in the playoff run, they've got another one who can step in and play really well. And in the Eastern Conference, I mean, when you look up and down the teams, there's a lot of teams that are in contention for the playoffs, but the Bruins will probably draw up in the playoffs against Toronto or maybe, I don't know, Pittsburgh or Detroit, something like
any
that.
One of the 7 Metro teams
Yeah,
that are
exactly.
in contention, right?
Yeah, like they could play any of those teams, but I give the edge to the Bruins there. In a Bruins Leafs series, I'm giving the edge to the Bruins just because of history. But yeah, I mean, I think the Bruins have played just really good hockey overall. They play a style of play where they get a ton out of the guys that they play on the ice. And I just think combined with the goaltending they've got, I think they absolutely deserve to be given a shot. I think they're in a similar spot as to what Vegas was last year at this time, where they're a good team, they're playing really, really well, but people are kind of looking at them like, okay, like they've maybe taken a step back because they aren't quite what they were last year. But then they end up in the playoffs and go all the way to the Stanley Cup final, playing that sort of responsible, safe, but good, physical, high pace kind of hockey. So we'll see what happens with the Bruins, but those are the teams I wanted to sort of highlight, and I'll throw it over to you to take it away and lay it on me.
I have all the same teams as you, but I have more.
Okay.
So I have the Florida Panthers as well as a team that I think is really in contention this year. They just play an awesome style of hockey. I didn't think that they were amazing last year, and then I was proven very wrong because they really showed just what their style can do. It's suffocating. They don't give you any time or space to think or so much as breathe when you have the puck. And it's every single player that's doing that, apart from the goalies, right? Like their defense are jumping into the play and challenging you. It doesn't matter that you're behind your own net. Brandon Montour's coming at you. But it's true. He's coming at you with a burst of speed, and he's trying to rip that puck off you. And that's a jarring thing to deal with a lot of the times. It's what caused the Leafs to collapse in that playoff series. And I look at the way the Florida Panthers play. They're intense. They're fast. They're not the heaviest team, but they've got some chonky boys, as Will likes to say now and then. But they're a really good team. They're just built well. They go fast, and they're not going to let you do what you want. They suffocate you, and that is so important.
Yep, I totally agree. I think it's funny too that you mentioned that they're fast, maybe not the heaviest guys. I always say this, but if you just take grade 11 physics, you'll know that kinetic energy is much more a factor of velocity than mass. And those guys have velocity for sure. And I mean, again, you're a guy who always likes fast players and fast teams. And the Panthers are a really good example of why that's such a benefit this day and age, because what's the solution to get through the Panthers, right? for a team that plays that way, like so aggressive, even when they don't even care if they have the puck. Like it seems like they don't even want
you
the
have
puck.
to match it. You absolutely
Yeah.
you have to be able to match that level.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
can't play your own
You gotta
game
go to
against
war.
that. It's
Yeah.
like trying to play a chess game where everybody's pushing their pawn, like your opponent's pushing all their pawns at you, and you're just developing normally. But even though, like, because I've had this happen where I play solid and try and like have a good position, but then my opponent will play some like what I think looks stupid at first, like pushing pawns in front of their king to try and actually attack me, and I just think, wow, you're dumb. And then I realize I'm the idiot because all of a sudden I'm under so much pressure that I can't really handle the position. So that's kind of the way it goes. When teams attack you so fast, like there's definitely a double edge to that. But when you're able to, in hockey, like you can move backwards, unlike in chess. So you can actually go back and fix your mistakes. So in the sense, like you can have guys cover, like Sasha Barkov. A guy like that is what allows a guy like Brandon Montour to just go AWOL and try and grab the puck in the offensive zone. So that's kind of the way I look at it. It's like, not that you're going to play fully positionless hockey, but there's more of that with Florida because they play so fast and they can cover and switch really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
That they just have a really awesome and fun brand that I think will win hockey games. Like to me, I think the finals at this point, if I had to pick, because I assume that Colorado is going to go out and get a second line center. Like I would be very surprised if a guy like Elias Lindholm isn't on one of like Boston or Colorado at the end of the year. And that would be awesome for either of those two teams. Like Colorado, I think it's going to be Colorado and Florida. I think that's going to be the finals right now. That's what I would lean. Because I bet on the guy, like they're the two fastest teams, I think. Like in terms, those two teams play such fast-paced, intense hockey with a lot of creativity and a lot of like positionless hockey as well at times, because they've got guys who are responsible defensively to cover for the defender who's challenging in the offensive zone. They're just way more modern in terms of their styles, and I think those two teams should probably be in the finals, just based on how I think about the game. It probably won't be, but I think either way, those two teams are really, really strong. And I will take the homer card here. I think the Leafs are extremely talented, but until Sheldon Keefe is unemployed by the team, they're not winning. They're just not.
Oh boy.
They don't play fast enough, and they don't play players that are like Nick Robertson should have a job, man. Why is David Kampf playing? Sorry. Doesn't make sense to me. Go out there and reward guys who are going to create and be tenacious and have some offensive ability. And there's a reason why Florida looks so much better, why Colorado looks so much better, and it's because of the way they play. It's not that teams like the Leafs don't have the talent to win the Cup. They absolutely do. But they have to shake up the way they play, because otherwise you can have all the talent in the world, but it's not going to yield the correct result unless you do things the correct way. And you can't just sit back and expect to win.
Yeah, let me just look at the Canucks depth chart, because it's like you look at the Canucks up and down their roster.
Oh, and I had the Canucks as well as potential contender, but like it's tough. They're similar to the Leafs to me in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
but they've got a better goaltend. They've got a better goalie.
Yeah, my brain farted there. I thought you were talking about the Leafs for a second, but
I was.
No, sorry, Canucks. I thought you were talking. About the Canucks.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my brain's a little scrambled. But yeah, I mean, I think on one hand you're correct. I think the talent of the Toronto Maple Leafs is certainly good enough. If Joseph Wool comes back and performs the way he was,
even better,
that's
than
another.
Martin
That's
Jones.
another. Yep, that's a factor. I don't think Martin Jones is your long-term solution, but you never know. Maybe you have lightning in a bottle for a season. Who knows? But I mean, man, it's just. What was that quote? I sent you a quote from Sheldon Keefe earlier this morning.
Marner that you sent.
Was it?
Yeah. And you said something very nice in response. But it's like loser mentality is what we're talking about here, right? Like
it was Sheldon Keefe. He said he finds it challenging at times to figure out who he needs to put out on the ice in key moments of the game. That in the playoffs is unacceptable. Like you cannot, especially like, I'm surprised he said that publicly. Again, like the things Sheldon Keefe says publicly are dumbfounding. And I don't know what message he's trying to send outside of like you said, loser energy, right? Like it's like, oh geez, I've got some of the highest paid guys in the whole world playing the sport.
Best players in the world on my team.
I don't know.
I don't know who I can
put out there,
here, man.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
I don't understand.
I don't know.
I've just meandered my way into the best record in franchise history.
Yeah, it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what? Like, are you blind? Like, what's happening? And so it's like you have.
Like, I don't want to be disrespectful to Sheldon because, like, it's a tough job. I admit, like, that's a tough job that there's a lot of scrutiny around it, and we're turning this into a Leafs a conversation. But like, they should be in this conversation. They have the talent. They have the ability to do it. They just aren't playing the way they need to do it. And I think that comes down to what systems they're playing. They're just trying to evaluate the position way too analytically. And I appreciate that there's analytic, like you look at things analytically, but you also have to just see what is noise. There is also noise within the analytics that shouldn't take away from what you're doing, right? Like, go fast.
Sure.
Why are they trying to be the Tampa Bay Lightning? They'd never had the goalie to be the Tampa Bay Lightning that won the back-to-back cups. Go do what Colorado has done.
Yeah.
I mean, be suffocating.
It's like, I don't want to talk about the Leafs forever, but again, it's like, they have had the talent to do it for years. It's just like the playoffs, it's setting aside the fact that the rules are completely different in the playoffs. They, like, I don't know. I've gone to a couple of Leaf playoff games over the years where that he, you know, like I've been to a couple of playoff games over the years, and the thing that just stands out to me is they just don't bring it. Like they think that they're like that the problem with the Leafs over the years has been they think things are going to be easy for them, and when they're not easy is when they show up. Like it's when they're down, like when they're under threat of like losing a game is when they'll play hard. And like that Florida game that I saw, the game where they were eliminated by Florida, like, yes, in that game, Sergei Bobrovsky stood on his head, but you could just tell, you could see immediately, even though Florida got outshot like 2-1, you could see how Florida won that game. They choked out the Toronto Maple Leafs every single chance they got, and the Toronto Maple Leafs were trying to play like the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so it's like, and I've seen that for so many years in a row that it's like, how are you going to teach that dog new tricks? Like maybe they win a series or two, right? Like I think that's possible and should happen. Like that's the expectation. It's just like when they line up against the Florida Panthers or the Boston Bruins or whatever, like not just because those teams are, you know, big and heavy and physical and blah, 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 like Don Cherry hockey.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares about the physicality at some level? Like the Leafs threw the most hits in the playoffs last year. What did it get them? One round. And I'm happy that they got past that barrier. That's huge. But at the same time, it's like I said it last stream. Sheldon Keefe gets outcoached in every single playoff series he's been in. Every single one of them. Even the one he won, he was outcoached. That was just the Leafs refusing to quit because they were down in 3 of those games that they won. They came back and won in overtime.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
so they were kind of down and out, and then all of a sudden, there's 3 goals on the board, and now they've won.
Even going as far back as when they collapsed, it was 4-1 game. They were losing that series 3-1, right? That series was almost a 5-gamer, and the Leafs were done, but they clawed back and almost won that series. Like they are capable of really good stuff, but it's like they need to be terrified in order to do anything. And I just think that's not a winning strategy. Like you said this last night, I think you said it's like they can't just control a game. Like they can't just seem to stay in control. They have to, if they're winning. I think I saw a tweet like this morning from Micah McCurdy about just how awful Toronto is when they have a lead. And in the playoffs, that cannot be an option. That's just not possible. That's not allowed. If you have a lead in the playoffs, you got to lock it down. Like, think of when the Leafs lost to Tampa Bay. I think it was a couple of years ago. It was game 6 or 7. I don't remember. Tampa just locked them down for a period and a half.
Oh, it was
frustrated them. Yeah, game 7. They shut them out. Not literally, but they closed out that game by just locking them out and just frustrating them. I don't see the Leafs do that a whole lot. So I don't know. Again, like I see where you're coming from, and I do think that there's a very good chance that they, go deeper than they usually have.
It's very possible. And like, there's no number one. Like, to me, there's no really clear number one this year.
No,
I think
don't
Florida
think so
and Colorado are going to be the finalists. But like, if the Leafs turn around the way they play, they could easily enter in that conversation. Vegas is in that conversation. Boston is in that conversation. Winnipeg is in that conversation. Even Vancouver, if they can continue to maintain their success. I will say, because we have not mentioned the New York Rangers at all, we don't believe in the New York Rangers here. We just don't. They're a team. They're a power play, and they've got really good players, but they play too slow. And I find that a lot of the times that they can get game planned, especially in a playoff series. Like, look at what the Devils did to them last year. They got game planned. And that's also why the Leafs fall apart, is because they get game planned.
Yeah.
So
I'll throw one more team as a dark horse out there, because I still believe in them, even though they've been having a real rough second quarter of the season. But that's LA.
Yep.
The LA Kings. The way they play is so good. Their goal differential is significantly better than their record would indicate. They've just had a really, really, really rough last little while. They're 7-7-5 at home, but they're 14-5-3 away. Like, if they just regress, if they win at home, like, I just saw this in the Pacific Division. Vancouver at home is 14-4-1. Vegas is 16-5-2. Edmonton is 12-6-1. Calgary is 11-7-1, and the Kings are 7-7-5. Like, if they can figure out how to win at home, like the teams that they're in the standings with, then they should not just make the playoffs, but look really good going into the playoffs. And I think that's obviously only one small part of the situation, but I think the Kings play a style of play that kind of could match up to teams like Vegas or Florida,
for sure,
or who have you. So if the Kings can make it in, like, they're going to be in tight against Edmonton. I think they might end up in a wild card spot, but if they end up playing like a Vancouver Canucks, I could see them taking out the Canucks in the first round. It's going to be tough maybe against the Winnipeg Jets, but I think I could see that too. I just think that you can't count that team out, even though they've been 1-5-4 in their last 10. They're not winning a whole lot recently, but I don't know. I watch them play, and they're just playing like a really, really good hockey team. So I'll just throw those out, that team out before we move on.
Yeah, and Edmonton too, to an extent. Like, the change under Knobloch's been insane. And I've as we've been doing this episode, I've been thinking more and more as I've been praising Connor McDavid, and I realized, I should never bet against him. So at some level, they've got they do have potential contention, but I think that's more on McDavid just deciding, you know what, I'm going to win the Stanley Cup. Like, finally hitting a level where he just does that, more so than how good their team is. Because they've got a fine team for the most part. They got some really awesome weapons, and then there's some not so great players on that team as well. But, like, McDavid is going to win a cup at some point. I get the feeling it's going to be in Edmonton. What year that's going to be, who knows? But I know he's going to win a cup. I just know it. He's going to do it. There's no way
it's going to happen. Oh, it has to. If it doesn't, that would be a tragedy. It's like Matt Sundin never winning a cup. Just an unreal player. Or Eric Lindros.
Joe Thornton.
Joe Thornton never won a cup. I hope that's not Connor McDavid added to that list. I really, really hope
I don't
not.
think it will be.
Because then he never gets into the world to the Hockey Hall of Fame. Then he never ever gets in.
Oh,
right?
He gets in. Get out of here. Trying to farm clicks.
He is a joke. Oh, Paul. I mean, hey, we could use him. Anyway, unless you have anything else to add, we can move on to chat questions for the rest of the stream. And give it a look. Do you have any final thoughts
one
on
thing that
things?
Brian said, and Brian Stewart, about his
Oh, and
read
Brian
on
Stewart?
what Sheldon Keefe was saying about it being passive aggressive to Brad Treliving. That's problematic, and just fire him already.
Yeah, that's not better.
That's worse.
Like, that's worse. Like, talking publicly to get to your general manager through the media in Toronto. That's like desperate. That's like desperate. How the Real Housewives of Toronto kind of thing. Like we don't.
Yeah.
That's not how you. That's not it.
Like, Brad Treliving has brought in some bad players and he's brought in some good players. I really like Tyler Bertuzzi. I know he's been snake bitten, but that guy shows every game
he's been good,
that he's awesome. Even if he's not scoring points, he hounds players. He's not the fastest dude, but he plays a style of hockey I really like. I just wish he had some more pep in his step. But
sure.
like, I've liked, who else have I liked that he brought in? Max Domi. Max Domi's been really good. I've really enjoyed watching Max Domi on this team. But yeah, he's got a spotty record. Ryan Reeves, John Klingberg. But Simon Benoit's been decent. Like, it's not like Brad Treliving has just brought in terrible players. He's brought in 2 terrible players that have had injuries this year, and that's part of why they're bad, at least in Klingberg's part, because he's pretty good offensively, despite the defensive woes he shows a lot of the time. But, like, I just don't think Sheldon's the answer. I just don't think Sheldon's the answer, and that's probably where we should end it for this.
I'll also just throw Timothy Liljegren out there. Third pairing defenseman Timothy Liljegren probably should be, one of those guys of who to play at certain times in the game.
Yep.
Anyway, we can move on. Let's get to the chat questions. Again, if you have any questions, we will get to them later on whenever we get through the list that we've already got. Yeah. So fire away. First thought or first question is thoughts on the Wings' surge right now. So the Detroit Red Wings currently are sitting in a playoff spot. They're sitting ahead of the Toronto Maple Leafs, even though they've played 2 more games.
Yep.
They're 7-2-1 in their last 10. I don't know what I really think about the Detroit Red Wings this season, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I think, obviously they're a good team. I love a lot of the guys that are on that team. Daniel Sprong, Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, Lucas Raymond, all favorites of mine.
Patrick Kane has helped a bit. Just not necessarily as impactful as I think a lot of people would have expected, but he's still been decent.
Yep. Like Alex Lyon has been having a great year with them as well.
Yep.
They've rotated 3 goaltenders and he's been the best one. I mean, do I buy that they're a team that's like gonna power their way through the playoffs? I don't think so, but I think they could make it. Like, I don't think it's that outlandish to say that the Red Wings will make the playoffs. But again, like the Eastern Conference is going to be crazy. Like between them, Tampa, Pittsburgh, Toronto, the Islanders, even like there's going to be the Devils could make a run at this. Like
Philly
the Devils
might even fall a little bit into that wild card race.
Yep.
Like there's so many good teams in the East.
Yeah, like I get the feeling with Detroit, it's like Detroit, they're going to be one of those teams where if they don't make it, I don't think it's a failure of a season so much as it's just they might have been a point or 2 short. Like it sucks. And so I think they've taken a big step this year, and I think their recent run is obviously a good thing. And I like a lot of the names on the team. I think their NHL team is built decently well. It'll just be a matter of can they sustain it? I know that for all patrons of the project, you can see on an NHL outperformance data dashboard I've created that Detroit is one of the teams that is outshooting expectations more than most teams. But that doesn't mean that it's not sustainable. They could keep it running for the rest of the year and make themselves into a playoff team. It's just, I think, but I think they're going to be part of that meaty middle of the NHL in the Eastern Conference. And who knows what's going to happen from there? I have no idea.
I get the feeling that they're going to miss, but I could be wrong. That's just my hunch. Like, I know I'm a Leafs fan, so take this with whatever grain of salt you want to. I just don't see them like taking out any of the top 3 teams in the Atlantic. Because, the Leafs have struggled recently, but they're too talented. They really are. Even with Sheldon Keefe, they're just too talented to miss here. Even if they get in and just squeak in. They could make it in on a wild card spot, but again, it's so tough. So tough in the East. New Jersey could surge. Like, Jack Hughes would have featured very prominently in this show had he not been hurt twice.
Dude, 100%.
Would have featured very prominently.
Yep.
Better than anybody on the Rangers. But anyways,
Artemi Panarin says hello, please.
But Jack Hughes is better. Let's be real. Let's be real, Will. But yeah,
Okay.
like I just think that they're
agree.
not there quite yet. Not to say that they can't be there at the end of the year, but like it's definitely a good run of form, and they've shown that they can at least compete. It's a good step, and I think they'll be a playoff team in the near future for a little while.
Right. Well, I mean that's fair. Yeah. So the other name that came up in the question here: what's your opinion on Lafreniere's season so far, and how is his trajectory looking? So I've seen the Rangers a few times this year. I think with Lafreniere, he obviously got off to a really, really fast start. He's been solid all year. I think he's on pace for a 50-point year. I think with Lafreniere, whenever I've caught him, the biggest difference to me seems to be that he's just a step quicker than he used to be. Like, I don't know if it's that he lost weight or that he got stronger or what have you, because I don't think his skating stride has really changed a whole lot, but he does seem to sort of have more of what he lacked last year, which was that extra step of quickness, that escape speed that he had moments of as a junior player, but didn't seem to really feel like he needed to utilize it. I will say that like having 50 points in a season where you're playing on Artemi Panarin, I mean, that's not ideal. I think he's out shooting, or I think he's underperforming his expected, like the amount of time. Like I think he's relatively snake bitten, but the fact that you're playing with Artemi Panarin and a 50-point player, I think says a lot. But that doesn't mean he's bad. It's just, when you look at the impact that he has on an Artemi Panarin when he's on the ice with him, it's not as positive as when he plays with the rest of the guys on the team. Like you're kind of ragging on the Rangers a little bit, but it's like they're a team that I think when you look down the lineup beyond their top guys like Panarin and Trocheck, Chris Kreider. Yeah, Zibanejad is the one I was thinking. Yeah, like when you look beyond those guys, the bottom kind of falls out quite a bit. And I think that at least offensively, you're getting a lot out of Lafreniere that's positive. But with Panarin and Trocheck, who are his most common teammates by far, he's not quite as much of a difference maker because I think those guys are just doing a lot of work with him. But he's been better than he was last year. I don't know what he's going to be. Really, he's going to be 23 next year. I do know that. But you know what? If it turns out that he turns out to be a 65-point guy starting next year, I think you might want a little more out of him offensively than if he's playing with Panarin. But also, I think he's underperforming points wise relative to what at least the data says he should be scoring. So I don't know. I think Lafreniere's taken a step, but also, yeah, like it just goes to show the NHL these days is really, really, really hard. Look at where Juraj Slafkovsky was last year as an 18-year-old and the steps he's taken this year. Again, not negative. I don't mean that negatively, but the NHL's really hard. Like Logan Cooley is driving really good offensive results, but off the puck, it's the opposite. Because playing defensively in the NHL, especially as a speed demon, is not easy. And with Lafreniere, like even Jack Hughes, right? It took a few years for Jack Hughes to really become what he is. So when I look at a guy like Lafreniere, I think next year could be good for him. He's been better this year, and I hope that trend continues because you always want to see guys succeed.
But yeah, I would say going on that, I just don't think you're going to get a whole lot more out of Laf. He's going to be a solid complementary player that'll put up 65 points to 70 points in his best season. He's not going to do a whole lot to really drive good play. He's just going to be there to help support your stars because that's what he kind of is. And it was kind of deceiving in the queue. We thought he was going to be really good, and that league is not necessarily the greatest for projecting good talent, unfortunately, because it plays very slow. And I think that affected him quite a bit, right? And so we saw him dominating at a level that's, I would say lower than the rest of the CHL and even the USHL.
Mm-hmm.
And it really skyrocketed him up boards. And he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's a good player, but he's just not anything special.
Right. So yeah, Liam asks if we've seen any of Noah Chadwick with Lethbridge. Yeah, I mean, I've seen him a little bit. I've watched quite a bit of Lethbridge this season, watching other players, mostly Miguel Marquez. Noah Chadwick, I mean, he has taken a step. I think he's shown that he's a solid defenseman. He uses his length really well. He's tall as hell. He's using his sort of tools from in the offensive zone a little bit more. I think the things I've sort of noted about him too is just the passing work is a lot more crisp than what I remember watching him in the offseason last year. I didn't see a ton of Chadwick last year. I kind of thought he might be more of a defense first type guy playing decently well in that role, but he's definitely taken a step. I don't know if I buy just how productive he has been long term. But I mean, as of today, it's looking like a pretty decent pick from Toronto, all things considered. Also, have you scouted Jet Lachenko of the Guelph Storm? Yes, I have. Central Scouting had him in the 20s for North American skaters, which is higher than most rankings. Yeah, so he, on my list, let me double check where he is. He's a guy that I think will be locked in. I don't think I'll be doing another game of his before the list comes out. He's in my early second round. He's sitting at 40, I think, if I'm reading this, 41. I like him a lot. I think he's in a group of guys that could go all over the place. Like if he's a late first round pick, I'm not surprised. Really young for the draft for sure. Really, really smart player. Like if you want this year's sort of Easton Cowan style guy, Lachenko's that guy. Like he's just really smart. Maybe not the most skilled, best shot, best playmaker, best blah, blah, blah. But, he's always in the right spots, reads play really, really well. Uses space in the defensive end to make himself a breakout option really, really well. Just finds his way around the ice with the puck just at a really high level. I don't think he has like a massive, massive ceiling, but for a guy that's say like a full year younger than a guy like Carter Yakimchuk or what have you, other guys that are in the CHL that are regarded highly, I just look at Lachenko and see a guy who brings so much to the table potential wise. You leave him in the OHL for a couple of years, and I don't know if he's like top 6 material in the NHL, but really, really, just really smart. One of the guys this year in the draft where when I watch him, I go, yeah, you're making good plays. You're fitting in on this ice surface in this game really, really well. You're just outplaying everybody. And that counts for something. And I think teams value that. So to see him in the late first round in the NHL draft, I think, I don't think would surprise me. I might not do it, but it would be not surprising to me. Sam O'Reilly has been playing some great hockey recently. What are your thoughts on him? So I haven't seen Sam O'Reilly in a while. But he's, to me, when I've seen him, he seems like a guy who is one of those just hardworking, hard-nosed, 200-foot effort guys who can shoot. It's not, I don't have him ranked, but he's probably one of the better players that I don't have ranked. My list, I'm trying to keep my list to 80 this season. And at the tail end of my list right now are guys like Kieran Walton and Nathan Villeneuve and Ben Danford, who are guys who I think might not have, with Walton, I see a huge amount of upside. It's not there yet. With Nathan Villeneuve, he seems to be like a Sam O'Reilly, but ratcheted up a little bit, a little more rambunctious, a little quicker, a little bit more physical and a little bit more skilled. But O'Reilly's been good this year. Like I think he's off the list, but just barely. And I will be doing another game of his probably before the list comes out, just to make sure that I would like to leave him off. So he'll change my mind if he plays well when I see him by the end of the month. Seeing rumors for the Wings looking into Capo Caco, Jonathan Berggren, and David Perron as components. I like the size aspect versus Berggren, who I like but can be a bit of a perimeter player. I mean, okay. I don't really know what I think about that trade. I mean, Capo Caco's been a solid question mark player for the Rangers. Like,
it's fine defensively, but like, what
yeah,
does he
fine
bring else?
defensively. Right. And I don't know why you would like I don't know why the Rangers would want Jonathan Berggren based on the types of players they like. And I don't know why Detroit would trade David Perron when, like, if you think you're going to make the playoffs,
that's a guy you keep.
You probably keep a guy like David Perron because he's going to muck it up and get in there and be a playoff guy. So I don't know why. Like, I feel like the Rangers would come out looking pretty good giving up Kako and getting that, but maybe not. I don't know. Like, Kako's been a solid player, and I don't know if he's really taken a huge step.
You don't hear much about him.
Yeah, you don't hear much about him. Holy crap, he has 4 points this year in 22 games. Oh boy, I didn't realize that. So yeah, again, similar to what we were talking about Trevor Zegras before, like if you're trading a 22-year-old guy who has 4 points in 20 games after a 40-point season last year, why would you trade him now? Like, that's about as low value as you're going to get. And also he's only 22. So I don't know, figure that one out for me, but I don't know where you saw that rumor or whatever, but I feel like that's a trade where it's like, if it happens, like, okay, sure. But I don't know why either team would really do that, but who knows? Where would Celebrini rank in terms of her first overall players in the most recent drafts, like from 2021 to 2023? My rank, so first overall in 21, I had Beniers. 22 was...
You had Wright, but now you would put Cooley.
Now I would put Cooley. In 2023, I had...
You know who you had.
Yeah, Connor Bedard, obviously.
Come on, man.
My memory is not good, okay? I am old, and my memory sucks. So Celebrini is certainly not Connor Bedard. In terms of Shane Wright, I like him more than Shane Wright. I don't like him as much as Logan Cooley, from what I remember, but he's not far behind him. Matthew Beniers comes to mind. Like, Celebrini kind of reminds me of like a weird mirror universe version of Matthew Beniers, where Beniers was a great play facilitator and a great playmaker and enabled everyone else to be better. Whereas Macklin Celebrini is much more of like an interior driven, drop a shoulder, get inside the middle of the ice, make plays, one of those guys, which I always really like about him, but also a pretty decent playmaker, at least moving the puck around the ice. He's pretty dependable in there, but I don't think he skates quite as well as Beniers. It's like they fill each other's strengths and they fill each other's weaknesses in a way. So I think that's kind of where I would put him, with Logan Cooley very, very slightly ahead of those two guys, and obviously Connor Bedard ahead of everyone else.
Well ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. So Jesse mentions Brock Besser for the Bill Masterton Trophy. I could surely see that for sure. What's a Celebrini comparison? I think like Nathan McKinnon. Well, yeah. Playing style wise, sure, but he's not Nathan McKinnon.
I've never seen the speed out of him.
No, he doesn't have that.
I've seen Macklin a few times, and I remember the first couple of viewings, I kept saying to Will, so what does this guy do? Because like at first I didn't see very many good viewings, at least initially, and these are a lot of D-1s, like D-1 tape. I never saw a speed demon like Nathan McKinnon.
No, he's not.
And that is at the crux of who Nathan McKinnon is his speed.
There is power behind Celebrini's game like McKinnon. Like, McKinnon isn't a power forward, but you can tell when he plays he's an intense guy. And I think you see similar things in Celebrini, where you see a guy who, again, like, is pretty fearless, attacks the middle of the ice really well. He's a really good defensive player as well at times, especially, in the offensive zone. Really, really smart, reads play really well, makes the right plays defensively more often than not. But I don't know, like, a player he reminds me of in the NHL, like, I don't know, like a Braden Point maybe, or a...
But then again, like, Braden Point's really fast.
Yeah, Braden Point's really fast.
I mean, he might just be one of those players that is kind of tries to play a faster style when he's not necessarily as fast, but
like Bo Horvat, maybe a little bit of that, like a Bo Horvat type guy.
Yeah,
who,
you know what? I can see that.
A point a game, maybe guy, just over a point a game, physical guy who's, dependable at both ends. I could see how he would be a captain. Sure, that kind of comes to mind, but yeah, I don't know. Nathan MacKinnon is a bar up here, like that, like player comparisons for guys that are like literally on pace for 140 points in the NHL is like
Nathan MacKinnon is in the top 4 at the very least of best players in the NHL. It's hard to give Nathan MacKinnon as a comparison. Like the same way I'd never give Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, or Kel McCarr as a comparison for guys.
Yeah.
I might say that they have elements of those guys. Like there are players that have elements. Like Connor Bedard has a lot of Austin Matthews shot, like the toe drag shot that he has. Like Matthews kind of pioneered that shot, and Bedard's that's his main offensive weapon. So in that way, he's comparable. But it's like those are the best 4 players in the league.
Yeah, I just think that's a really high bar. And I think, I always am a fan of setting your expectations low and letting the player surpass those expectations because it feels a lot better. Anyway, next question is thoughts on Brandon Lazowski, a Leaf prospect who's on the smaller end of the scale, but a good scorer. Any thoughts on NHL projectability? I don't think he's an NHL player just because I don't think he's particularly got enough escape speed. He's not a particularly good transition player. But boy, can he score goals. Like he can shoot. He's a high pace guy. He plays with a lot of energy, but I don't see an NHL high end scorer there. And I mean, he's not a guy who's going to play bottom 6 minutes. I just don't see it. He was a boomer bust guy when he was drafted. I think he was one of the best players on my list when he was drafted. I had Alexis Gendron a little bit higher, which I still stand by. But Brandon Lazowski's been extremely good in the WHL. He kind of, he might have a career similar to like a Ty Ronning, where he's scoring goal after goal after goal in junior. And yeah, he might find a little bit of success at the pro level, with the Marlies or whatever, with the Growlers or whatever you want to call it. And then just kind of bounces around a little bit in the minors, goes to Europe perhaps and scores goals. I could see that for Brandon Lazowski. Not saying it's impossible, just a tough to project game, especially for the kind of role that he kind of needs in order to play. Granted, Toronto could use guys who can really just all they do is shoot, but I don't think they value that type of profile particularly much.
Nick Robertson.
Well, he does more than just shoot.
Please play Nick Robertson.
No, Nick Robertson's going to be in a Minnesota Wild jersey.
I told you it's going to be Seattle because that's what happens with Seattle. They find guys who are really good at scoring goals.
Yep. He'll be Toronto's Eeli Tolvanen.
Exactly.
Yeah, waive him because you don't think he can play in your bottom 6. Next thing you know, he's actually on the second pair or second line on any other team in the league. Anyway, next question is Gavin McKenna is playing amazingly. Where would he go if he was draft eligible for 2024? Oh, come on, man. He's born December 20th, 2007.
Oh, God.
But if he's a 2026 eligible and you're asking about this year, I mean, he's an extremely talented player. He's still quite physically underdeveloped. He gets pushed around quite a bit in the WHL, but at the end of the day, who cares? Because he scores on a pace. He's on a pace for 89 points this year as a guy draft eligible in 2026. I mean, is he more exciting than most of the players in this year's draft? Probably. I'd probably throw him at number 2, maybe number 1, but it's hard because he just turned 16. So I will ask me again in 2 years. I heard Tony Ferrari say that he feels there are a lot of 2 to 4 defensemen, number 2 to 4 defensemen in the draft. Do you feel the same way mainly because there are no true number 1 defensemen in the bunch? I mean, the thing about that is it depends on who you deploy. Is it TJ Brody right now is a top pair defenseman? Should he be? No.
He definitely was at that level for a fairly long time, but anymore, no.
I mean, I think there's a lot of guys that could play top pair minutes if things go well. Guys like Adam Jiricek, I think, are highly underrated. Zeev Buyam, I don't know if I would put him out as a top pair guy, but he's very good. Artyom Levshinov, I don't know if I would trust him playing 25 minutes a night.
Add one thing. How many true number 1 defensemen are there in the NHL? Not
on
even
paper 32,
but not even enough
but no,
for 32
yeah,
teams.
Not even enough. Yeah, not even enough for 32 teams.
Some teams have two of them. Like Colorado has Kel McCarr and Devon Taves, and those are two number one defensemen. And other teams don't have any of them. Like
and who are the
Montreal
number one defensemen
right now?
AJ, you might know this better than me, but who are the number one defensemen in the NHL that were drafted super, super high in the draft? Cale Makar.
Yep.
Quinn Hughes.
Morgan Riley.
Yep.
There's other ones we're just forgetting.
Victor Hedman.
Yes, Victor Hedman. Roman Josi was not. Rasmus Dahlin is one of them because he was drafted first.
What's the common thread between all these guys?
Aaron Ekblad was drafted 1.
I don't know if you call him a number 1.
Well, they got a bunch of really good defenders, but you could definitely make the case that he's a number 1.
But I mean, like on the same level as all the guys we just mentioned, probably not. Like 2. Sure.
I guess Dougie Hamilton, but was he even drafted? Yeah, he was drafted.
Yep, he was 10th overall. Yeah, with the Toronto Maple Leafs draft pick.
Yeah,
but like, the common thread between all of those guys is that they are all leaning offensive. Like those guys all pretty much lean offensive in their game, and so
except Charlie McAvoy, but he wasn't even drafted high, right?
He was a middle first round pick.
Yeah, exactly.
So like not super high, but he also scored a lot in college that year. I mean, not a point a game, but he scored a lot. So like the guys in the draft, like drafting good defending defenders doesn't really happen all that often at the high end of the draft. Like if you're drafting a defenseman high in the NHL draft, generally you should be looking for offense. It's rare to find guys that are strong defenders that remain strong defenders moving forward. I don't really see that with a whole lot of defensemen this year right now. Like Zeev Buium is a decent defender, but his game leans more offensive. Adam Jiricek, I think, is the closest thing, just based on how he uses his feet to defend. Like if we're talking about Brock Faber and how he skates, I think Adam Jiricek has a lot of echoes of that. And I'm going to hold strong with him being really, really good in this draft. But like, Artyom Levshinov chases so much offense that I think he sacrifices a lot defensively. And that's true every time I've seen him play. And even defensively, he's a bit of a mixed bag. So like if you're looking for number one defensemen, especially those that aren't just guys that go out there and score their way out of defensive problems, you're in tough generally. The trend is not super positive for you, at least to my knowledge, to my memory. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's anyone who looks like a top number one guy this year. But I do think that there's a lot of potential second pair guys that are available. And I think there are some guys that could come out of nowhere that turn out to be second pair guys that a lot of people might not be giving a lot of attention to. Interested in the solid rundown of Liam Greentree. I mean, he's pretty easy. He's good at everything except skating around the ice. Really strong on his feet, really skilled, really creative, good shooter, really good playmaker, but slow, behind the play a lot. Very, very good at reacting, but not very super proactive offensively, but supremely talented. Like he's a guy who I think could go maybe even in the top 10. Maybe I don't know if I would do that, but he's ranked quite high on my list. I think I have him at 17, higher than Central Scouting. And I think he brings a ton to the table that certainly can't be overlooked, but I think there's major weaknesses with regards to his skating. Like if you want to talk sort of like a Matthew Nyes type player, he's kind of up that alley. Just I think with more skill and a bit of a longer reach, but yeah, I think he's a great player. Just there's work to be done. How much do we weigh a season-ending injury like for Kivi Haru and Jiricek? A large part of me is still expecting Jiricek to go top 15 on projection alone. Yeah, I mean, I hope he does because I think he deserves it. Kivi Haru, I think he's coming back next month. I think that I saw that somewhere, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I watched Kivi Haru 2 or 3 times early in the year before he got injured, and I did not think he was very good. I think you and I watched him too, AJ, at the beginning of the season, and we both kind of went, ooh.
That's exactly the reaction we had was, what is going on?
He's not in my first round. He's actually in the later part of my second round. I just didn't. I don't know. I've never been a huge Kiviharju guy over the years, just because I just don't think his game projects super well to the NHL as is.
Oh, that's amazing. When I searched up Aaron Kiviharju, the first video result is our YouTube short. That's amazing.
Well, there you go. Beautiful. But yeah, I mean, with Jiricek, I do think that there's a good chance he comes up pretty high in the draft. I'm hoping that he might get into a couple of games closer to the draft, like his brother did when he had a knee injury. But luckily, I mean, my knowledge, full disclosure, I don't know where it is. I think it's upstairs somewhere. I've got my Bachelor of Science degree in kinesiology from McMaster University in Ontario, Canada. And a big thing that we were really told in a lot of these sports injury classes and a lot of this stuff, granted, this is 15 years ago almost, but I think a lot of it still holds up. Like the amount of advancement that the medical knee replacement and knee repair surgery tool, like the prognosis around that kind of treatment and surgery is light years better than it was when I was little, like in the 90s. Light years. Like it should not affect him at all long term. It's just going to be a matter of maybe giving him, next year, if he's not outstanding right away, to give him a bit of a break on that. But I do think that there's a lot of potential with Jiricek still, and I'm not super concerned about his injuries. Kiviharju, I mean, I'm not concerned really about his injury either, but I also didn't really think much of him before he was hurt.
Yeah, like he's a really crafty passer, but he's not really fast. There's not there's not a ton after his passing that is really enticing.
I can see the tweets now in 7 years of, boy, what if Kiviharju's career wasn't derailed by injuries? And it's like, nah, I don't know. I think that he's a guy who's not the best skating, undersized defenseman who needs to pass the puck to be good. And I just don't know how well that projects.
And I hate to say this, but Finland is always kind of a little bit weird in terms of
big time. Look at Capo Caco,
how
man.
points are scored, man. It's kind of ridiculous.
Capo Caco, Joakim Kamel, Brad Lambert.
It can be a bit of an enigma looking at Finland, like players from Finland, and you think, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. And now look at Capo Caco, look at Jesse Puljujärvi, look at Patrick Laine, right? I think Aaron Kiviharju might fall into that mix had he not gotten injured and still had a lot of hype around him.
Right.
It's just a weird league. It's a weird league that I struggle to understand at times because it's just slow, very passive. And this is a professional league, and they just rip pucks from everywhere. And somehow it beats the goalie. It's like the professional version of the QMJHL sometimes watching the Liga. Yeah,
I can agree with that. Okay, here's a question that you're going to love, AJ. Is Fabian Lysell destined to be a career AHLer? Love the show. Well, thank you very much. For my own safety, I'm going to say no, because I feel like if I say yes, AJ is going to come to my house and burn it to the ground.
But let's be real. Well, you can.
I don't think he's
not
going
to be a career AHL.
I
he's
genuinely
turning 21
don't think he's
tomorrow.
Yeah,
he's turning 21
I think he's going to be
tomorrow.
fine.
He's a really fun, good player that has a lot of speed, is a little pest, and he definitely needs to tone it down with the penalty minutes a bit. But like, that kid gives a crap. He goes, and goes. And I know he didn't make the roster this year, but it's like Matt Poitras is more suited to fit the Boston Bruins the way he currently plays. Like Jim Montgomery even said during training camp, they expect him to be an offensive contributor, and it's like they didn't give him a ton of looks in the preseason, but he didn't produce a whole lot while he was there, which I get it. Like, he didn't score, and that's fine. But like, he's a really good player that we're gonna look at in a couple of years and be like, that's another Anthony Duclair. That's another Nick Ehlers type of guy that's just really fast and is really good, but will not ever really get the time of day in a lot of people's minds. Like, he's just a good player.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that he's a guy who, I mean, when I watch Providence, like him and Jesper Boqvist together have been dynamite, I thought, just in terms of driving results, and Boqvist is getting called up, and I have like Georgi Merkulov there too, and he's been called up, but I think Lysell, they're just really getting him used to the idea of earning his job in the NHL. Like, they're not handing it to him just because he's skilled, right? I don't know. I'm not super concerned. So we'll see. But
and just wait
hopefully,
until he's on Pasternak's wing, like on the other side of him, putting up like 70 points or 80 points seasons. Because I bet you, I honestly wouldn't doubt it happening, because he'll play with the David Pastrnak on his own. Like with a more average NHLer, I think he's a 65, 70 point guy, potentially. But I think he's a really good player. Like, go watch Nick Ehlers. That's what you're not that you'll get that exactly, but that's kind of the style of player I think he'll end up being.
Yeah, for sure. Any thoughts on Teddy Stiga? 23 points in 15 USHL games. Yeah, I love him. He's in my first round, and my first round is locked in. So look forward to that, because he rules. Rambunctious little guy, but he is super skilled, super smart, super slick. Just does so many things really well. No slouch off the puck either. I love Teddy Stiga a lot. And where did CSS have him ranked? They had him at 72 in North America. So if you can get a guy like Teddy Stiga in like the third round, yes. Clark Caswell's potential. I mean, Clark Caswell's kind of similar to Jet Luchenko, like in the right spots all the time. Super, super smart, great play facilitator, really, really smart player. I've come a long way on Caswell since watching him earlier in the year. I've thought that he is worth a top 2 round pick. I don't know about first round, but if he was a surprise pick in the late first round, I wouldn't be surprised. And I think that Clark Caswell is a guy who fits in maybe as just a good play facilitating third-ish line guy. Like, you see what Matt Poitras does with the Boston Bruins, and I feel like a similar type of player could be there in Caswell, just based on how smart he is with his positioning and spacing and selflessness and all the stuff you really want to see out of a good center. Thoughts on Joe Connor? I mean, he's a +1 USHL guy. I've seen him a couple of times and had him on the list on and off during the year. Quick release on his shot, decently skilled. I just, again, is he at the bar where I'm going to put him on my ranking list? Probably not, but he's not that far off. Like, if he gets a late round flyer or mid to late round flyer, I'm not surprised. He could deserve a shot, but I don't see him as like a massive player, but he is good. I'll say that. Just not quite on my list. Cole Baudouin, big, strong two-way player. What's his closest comparison? I mean, I don't know. I don't think Cole Baudouin is going to be like a huge NHL figure, but he's going to muck it up. I'm trying to think of any fourth line NHL guy that plays hard, plays fast, will drop the gloves if he has to, throws his weight around, and goes. Like, he's a goer. So, put that together. I don't know what kind of NHLer. There's probably a lot of them. Not necessarily like a pest, but a big, heavy guy who will skate hard. He can go to the net, muck it up, and I've seen him drop the gloves. Like, I think I did, at least. So yeah, I mean, he's a solid player, and I think there's a NHL projectable player there, just maybe not super, super, super high end. Andrew Crystal with a 22 game point streak and nobody cares. Well, I mean, yeah, he has been very, very good this year. He's still Andrew Crystal, though. Like, the foot speed is still a bit of a problem, but I think he's getting better at working around it, so that's a plus for him. But yeah, he's good. Which player in the NHL would most benefit from an organizational change? Nick Robertson.
Wow, thanks.
Yeah, that's for you.
It might be true, but there's probably some other ones. I'd have to think about that.
Eeli Tolvanen was a good one from last year.
But which one now? Andrei Kuzmenko, I think, would benefit from an organization change. It seems like Rick Tocchet's given up on him. And I mean, he kind of can do with that. Like, yeah, he has the full go-ahead with that, because, like, look at how well the Canucks are performing.
Yep.
But who cares? Andrei Kuzmenko will be a good player on another team.
Yep. I think that's a good answer.
Like, who else could we even possibly conceive of to need an organizational change?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because there are definitely players. It's just I wasn't well prepared for this question.
Yeah. for a number of years, the answer was Daniel Sprong.
Yes.
And then Seattle found him. Jonathan Berggren comes to mind, maybe.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah.
Last year, I would have said Elias Pettersson just to be a bit of a bum to stir up some controversy, but he definitely does not need to change organization at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would say Kuzmenko and sadly Nick Robertson, probably the big ones.
Yeah, probably. Okay. Speaking of the QMJHL, thoughts on Alexander Blais? I mean, he's okay. Blais is fine. I don't have him ranked. There's a couple of Q guys this year that I do like. He is not one of them. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think I only have like 2 Quebec guys ranked, so he's not one of them. I don't know. He's a skill guy in a league where skill takes you a long way. And I just don't see an all-around game that I feel super comfortable projecting into the NHL, but he's going to score a lot of points. He's going to have a good NHL E-card. He's going to look good on paper. And he's really skilled for sure. I just don't think I see a super, super high-end NHL prospect there with Blais.
And one of Will's QMJHL players that he has ranked, I know at least one of them does not play in the Quebec side of that league.
No, it's true. Yeah, they're in the Maritimes.
Are they both in the Maritimes?
No, one of them is. The other guy is Maxime Massé is also on my list from Chicoutimi. Okay. Blue Science, member of the Discord server, great musician as well. Hello. What happened with the Q? Has it always been of lower quality? No, I don't think it's always been lower quality.
It's just slowed down.
It
hasn't really evolved.
Yeah, it hasn't evolved like the rest of the leagues in the world has. And I think the similar things could be said about
the OHL a little bit,
the OHL and the WHL, even like the WHL less so, but you watch some USHL games, we talk about this all the time, but it's just completely a different world, right? Like you have the United States, where I would argue that the young hockey players down there could hold a candle to Canadians for sure.
Might even be like they're better at developing players, I think.
Yeah, and everybody there, every single junior player goes to one league if they are a top level junior player, right? You don't see the NHL drafting guys out of the NAHL or NCDC or whatever other regional or other league in the US that you want to look at. But in Canada, there isn't that. And in Quebec, from an outsider's perspective, I think that the old school mentality of what hockey should look like and how it should be played and, all that stuff even that, like, the defensive play in the Q has not it's not good, straight up. Like they're just not good a lot of the time. Like Noah Warren was among one of the better defensive defenders in the Q when he was drafted, but you watch him at the World Juniors and you're going, well, okay, like I don't think that this guy is that much of a rock in his own end. I don't know. So I don't know. I think that the Q, the rest of the world has kind of evolved, and that play and that area of Canada kind of hasn't, and they're still getting the skill down. There are guys with lots of skill, and they can score, but the defending and the goaltending kind of makes things look a lot more inflated. Like look at the QMJHL guys that have been drafted and now they're in the AHL. The majority of them are not doing much, except Zach Leroux, I think, and Zach Leroux is an animal. Like he's all over the ice all the time. He's rambunctious. He's hard. He's intense. Whereas other guys like Zach Bolduc and Zach Dean and other super high skill Q guys just really seem to struggle in the pro level.
I would say that Maverick Bourque is probably the best guy
to
come out recently.
Yep.
He's a ton of fun.
Yep. Yeah,
but
he's a good option too.
It's not that he's a very fast player at all. He's just highly creative.
Smart as hell and creative.
Yeah.
Do you think playing in the tougher leagues like the WHL and OHL in a full season and playoffs is why the QMJHL has won the majority of the Memorial Cups recently? Yes, on one hand, but also it's the Memorial Cup. Like it's a 5-game tournament, right? Like, is the Czech Republic a better country at hockey than Canada because they won in the quarterfinals against them in the World Juniors and in the quarterfinals or in the semifinals of the under-18s for women? Like, no, But this is hockey, right? Like weird stuff happens. I was talking to someone with a WHL team that went to the Memorial Cup recently, and he was infuriated because the host was a Quebec team and they had weeks of rest. And he knows just how hard the WHL is physically. And he was telling me, like, this guy was banged up. This guy was dealing with this injury. This guy was dealing with this. This guy was dealing with this. And the team from Quebec, the one that went through the playoffs, they were pre-scouting them, and they did not have the same physical intensity level in their playoff run at all. And the hosts had weeks off to rest. I don't think they even went that far in the playoffs. So there's been a lot of, it's just, I think it's partially a sample size, partially a league difference, partially a style of play, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really chalk much up in terms of the supremacy of junior hockey in Canada to who wins the Memorial Cup. It just, like imagine if the NHL had a tournament with, say, the team that wins the KHL, which they used to do. And the NHL lost a bunch of those games, right? Like it's not, and it's also, I don't know, it just wasn't the NHL team's priority, but they also went through an intense playoff, and I don't know. And Russia doesn't play as much, and they have a lot more rest. But I'm rambling on about stuff that doesn't matter.
I saw a quick Twitch question come in that I just want to answer. It's hockey.
Yep.
Don't worry, we're not talking about the budget football that is the CFL, because that league stinks.
Yeah, no, not CFL.
Don't worry.
Wait, hang on. Whoa, hang on.
No, the CFL sucks.
The CFL sucks, but Canadian football
also
is better than American. No, it's better than American football.
It's worse.
Yes,
Will.
it is.
No, it's
no,
worse.
It's not.
It's absolutely worse.
Nope.
You can't tell me that 110 yards make any sense. Putting a field, like the actual physical field goalposts in the middle of the end zone is worth it at all.
That's what I am.
Being able to kick a field goal into the end zone should not count as 1 point, even if you don't get it through the upright. It's dumb. It's dumb and archaic. And I don't, why are we holding on to such a dumb tradition that it's just inferior in every way to the NFL? Completely inferior.
Of all people, I would have thought that you liked the CFL because there's
inferior.
There's more exciting stuff in a CFL game. It's the plays are riskier because they have to go further. They air the ball way more. Like, it's fewer downs, so the possession changes way quicker.
Yeah, with a bigger dumb football, who cares?
I don't care. The specifics, I don't care. Watching the game, I always have more fun watching a CFL game than an NFL game. I think NFL is unbelievably slow. Unbelievably,
then.
It's
I prefer the NFL, man. It's way more fun to me. I'd rather see the best players in the world playing with a standardized ball across every single league, pretty much, except for in Canada.
I'm not saying the rules are better.
Dude, we're only holding on to tradition because
that's Canadian.
We're Canadian, and
that's very Canadian.
We got to be better than Americans when we're absolutely not. Canadians aren't even nicer than Americans.
That's often very true. Very true.
Truthfully, I went to Pittsburgh, had an awesome time. People stopped me to talk hockey. Never happens in Toronto. Never happens in Toronto.
Well, Toronto, everybody's going somewhere. They're going to a restaurant.
Dude, 40% of the country lives in the greater Toronto area.
Yep.
So that's 40% of Canadians. Yeah,
all you have to do is drive on the 401 for 20 minutes and you'll see just how awful we are.
Exactly.
Anyway,
if you want to stick around for hockey, dude. We're happy to have you.
Any overagers that you like so far? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot on my list this year because I'm not super fond of a bunch of guys this year that are draft eligible. So obviously, Yuri Tiachek is back on the list since he's eligible for the last time this year. I don't think he's going to get picked, but he probably should because he's just dominating the league in Czech Republic. I've got Hugo Franzen, a defenseman in Sweden, ranked. Kenta Isegai, obviously, because he's on pace for 105 points in the WHL this year. Isaac Hedqvist is a re-entry from Sweden that I'm interested in. Yegor Klimovic, member of Team Scouching, is on the list as well. And then there's a bunch of overagers I have on my watch list, but you'll have to wait to find out who those are until I publish things at the end of the month. Surely Griffin Erdman gets drafted. Yeah, no, I think you're dreaming there. I like Griffin Erdman, but I don't think he's getting drafted at all.
Yeah, dreams don't always happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, he'll probably go, I imagine he'll go to college, and I bet you after a few years, if things go the right way, he'll get himself a contract, but I don't think a team is going to draft a guy like that, unfortunately, as much as I love him. He was on my list for oh no, he is on my list, so I have him on the list, but I'm not holding my breath. Joshua Waugh scored an NHL goal, so thoughts on his potential and who's your favorite, and why is he your favorite player in all of sports? Man, that goal, Sean Monahan, what a play. I don't care what anyone says. I was watching Joshua Waugh last night, and I sat there going, yeah, he's still Joshua Waugh. He's a target. He's a guy who finds space, you give him the puck, and he can shoot. End of story. And that's what he did. He found space in front of the net. Simon Nemec went for a little adventure into the corner by himself on his stomach, and I don't know what he was doing there, being Simon Nemec in his own end, I guess. But anyway, but there he was for an easy tap in. But Sean Monahan made a great play on that goal too. And I mean, I get why people are so focused on Joshua Waugh. I don't know. He's still the same player I've seen, and he's not a bad shooter, and he's certainly improved his shot selection from when I remember drafting it, or him being drafted. Because I remember how many times, like I can't even count how many times he would get the puck, step over the offensive blue line, and just put it on net. And it was like, well, okay, I don't see how you're going to score goals doing that in the NHL, but go nuts. Would you scratch Nyes for a game? Probably not. I don't know. Who are you putting in instead, right?
Like, if it's Nick Robertson, sure, but like, why wouldn't you be scratching David Kampf? Oh, so I see.
Well, neither of those guys are wingers or centers, right? Those are both wingers. So
yeah, but just throw Noah Gregor at center or Pontus Holmberg back at center, man.
Yeah,
like,
true.
They've got flexibility. It's just dumb. Even Calle Jarnkrok can play center at times. Like, David Kampf's a non-factor. Also, I love that I'm getting flamed for saying that the CFL
because
sucks.
You're incorrect.
No, it's just not appealing to me. All right, maybe it's because I'm from Toronto, and as that comment points out, but like I just don't care. I don't care. I'm a Bills fan, and I root for the Bills because that's a more fun game for me.
Well, okay then.
To each their own.
To each their own. Is Tija Ginla worth a first-round pick? If so, where in round one, or is his last name helping a lot? I think he's a first-round pick. Top 10 or 15 is a little bit rich for me, but, I have him at 20, 21, and I think somewhere in the 20s makes sense. Like, I could see him being a solid middle six energy guy. He's got that dog. He's a good shooter. He has some skill as well. Pretty smart player. I think he's going to be a solid NHL player. I just think that there are guys with a bit more skill and a bit more offensive creativity and just a bit more diverse games with a bit more potential ahead of him. But I could see him being drafted a little bit higher than where I have him ranked, but I'm not holding my breath. I think he's going to be a solid NHLer, though. Is he like an elite player because he's on pace for 89 points? I don't think so, but he's playing very well. Any updates on where you have Satan? Well, Satan isn't super great in my books, but I certainly, he's a lot more fun than God. I'll say that. A lot more fun when I think about Satan and, the whole Hail Satan thing. But anyway, I think you're talking about Miroslav Shatan, son of Miroslav Shatan. I was actually watching him 2 nights ago or last night. I don't remember. And he is a project. Like, if your team steps up to the plate and swings on Miroslav Shatan at like 36th overall, people are going to look at his stats and go, what in the name of God are you thinking? And I wouldn't do it, but he is a 6'7" setter who is not particularly the best skater in terms of straight line speed or anything, but he's pretty mobile. He's pretty fluid, but not the quickest guy, not the most skilled guy. But you see moments. You see little odds and ends here and there where he does a really good job sort of moving play in the right direction, making little slip passes. Think like very much discounted Uri Slafkovsky, who is much thinner and not nearly as physically developed and also plays center. How about that? That makes sense. Similar kind of brand of player, just much more raw. So we'll see what happens with him, but he's a guy that I could see going much higher than people might think. Why did Craig Button have Berkeley Catton 13th in his January 2024 rankings? Because he wasn't at the World Junior A Championships or something. I don't know.
Go
but
ask
Berkeley
Craig.
Catton is, go ask Craig. Catton is significantly better than that, in my opinion.
I think he's actually a decent enough guy where he'll answer a lot of stuff.
Yeah, probably. You could probably DM him and he'll answer.
Still talks to our good buddy Tony Ferrari, even though he calls him Craigery every time he talks to him. And Craig has told him to stop doing that, which I find amazing. And Tony still does it, and Craig still puts up with him.
Yep. Alexander Zetterberg thoughts. I actually have a game of his to check out in the next week or two because he's not ranked on my board. I get the feeling he's going to be a very, very good hockey Allsvenskan player or a pretty good SHLer, but I don't think his game projects particularly well because he's pretty small, not a super great player under pressure, needs a lot of space to make things happen. He's not the best zoom boy, but he's got a bit of skill. He's creative, but I just don't know if it's going to be enough. QMJHL or MHL, which league is better? The best teams in the MHL, I think, are better than QMJHL teams, but the Q as a whole, I think, is a better league than some of the teams in the MHL are shameful. Like, they are bad. Like, imagine the Chicoutimi Saguenay had 2 farm teams in the same league. What would that third farm team look? What would that second farm team look like in the QMJHL if Chicoutimi was able to put guys on that team? It would be brutal. But I think that like teams like St. Petersburg, 1946, certainly could play in the Q and do pretty well. The Red Army team, I think, could play pretty well in the Q. There's a few teams that I think would play pretty well in the Q, but the league as a whole, I think I'd give it to the Q. Where will Kapanen slot in after we trade him back to you guys for Robertson?
Not allowed. You are banned.
Oh, God, that's awesome. No, I love you, Matt. You're a good guy. I think that's it. If Joshua Waugh ever wins the Hart, you might have won the Hart Trophy, Joshua Waugh, but what a season from Sean Monahan. Sean Monahan. Yeah, that's true. Look, is Joshua Waugh going to be in the NHL? That's not up to me, but
he just is.
Is.
No disputing that he's in the NHL. Can he stay there? We'll see.
And I remember Ryan Poehling scoring a hat trick against the Leafs in his rookie season in his first game, and everybody lost their minds. You got to be patient with guys. You got to chill. Anyway, Cole Eiserman thoughts. Boy, I could write a novel. I did another game of his. I will say he is not in my top 10. I have not really liked Cole Eiserman much this year at all. I mean, he scores goals, but wait for the rankings because I wrote a whole bunch about him for sure. Remember Fabian Brunstrom, Mikael Holm from the top rope. What's going on, buddy? Yeah, I do remember Fabian Brunstrom, and I remember how much I wanted him as a young Leaf fan when I was a little boy. Because there was a lot, dude. The chatter about Fabian Brunstrom going into him getting signed was outrageous. And then he comes in and scores a hat trick in his first game with the Dallas Stars, and everyone was like, this is the answer. This guy is the future of hockey. Holy smokes. And then he scored like 2 goals in the next 120 billion games he played. Anyway, I'm going to call it here. My throat is shot and we're running way over time. But thank you very much.
Gleb Trikazov is good. All right.
He's having a rough year, but he's still good.
It's still good, but yes.
Yep. Okay. So that will be it. What?
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, we got to go now because we've been.
Yeah, we got to go.
We're 33 minutes over.
Yeah, and I got things to do, and I got to go to the bathroom. But anyway, before we go, I do just want to say we're brought to you by Fanatics. You can click the QR, you scan the QR code below, or you can click the link in the description, and we get a small kickback on anything you buy. You can also support us through Puck Preps, where Sam and I and a bunch of other smart people cover the NCAA and their prospects and a bunch of other stuff in the CHL draft. The only place you're going to find that stuff is in there. Fractal Hockey Consulting also sponsors the show, which is my business for hand track player analysis and recruitment packages. And of course, Scouching.ca, where you can get a bunch of cool data tools, early access to blogs, our really fun Discord server.
Please join the Discord. It's a lot of fun, guys.
It is a lot of fun. We do board game nights. It's good.
We tried to host one last night. We only got one person, so make us feel less sad.
Yeah,
Come
exactly.
Join us.
Yeah. We have crippling depression. Anyway, unparalleled insights into draft prospects, and you can find out a bunch of information about players in the draft and on their way into the NHL. So that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. I think we had a lot of fun. This was a good show.
Wait,
AJ, once again. Oh, what? Okay, go.
Go Leafs, go.
Okay. Well, thank you in any case, Mr. Jadaro. You're a wonderful producer, and it's a good spirited discussion today. So, it's all good. So that'll be it, I guess. Unless you have any parting words other than go Leafs go, I guess we can call it a day.
That was it.
All right.
But from now on, I will wait until you say any parting words, and I will finish like that from now on. That'll be the sign off.
All right. Now I know what never to say. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, again. And we'll see you on Monday night, where it will be, again, just me. We'll see if we can pull a guest and get a guest on the show. So have a wonderful remainder of your week. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you then.